Tonight, Superman's identity is revealed, and it almost gets as much press as a Taylor Swift album drop. Grayson finally gets a look at his own ass, and it only gets more indulgent from there. And Harley Quinn spends God knows how many pages talking about the various fluids that come out of various holes. Thanks for that one. All that and more tonight on the Not So New 52. Hello everyone and welcome to episode 208 of the Not So New 52. I am your host and I'm going to keep this real brief because we got 15 comics to talk about. 15 goddamn comics. Yes, it's a lot. So I'm just going to list them off real quick and then I got one thing I want to say before we start the episode proper. So in alphabetical order, things coming up on this episode are Aquaman, Batgirl, Cyborg, Deathstroke, The Flash, Gotham by Midnight, Grayson, Harley Quinn, Justice League of America, Justice League 3001, Prez, Sinestro, Superman, Teen Titans, and We Are Robin. So all that's coming up. And the only thing I want to say before we roll into the comics proper is I am actually moving pretty much 4 days after this goes live. So I don't know how my next episode is going to be set up. I don't even know if it's going to be out on time. I'm really going to try, but if I'm ever going to miss an episode, it's going to be next week's. I'm not even going to miss an episode for my wedding, which is also coming up relatively soon, but like, the move is the only thing that might be iffy, because if I don't have internet, I don't have internet. So, yeah, that's all I really got to say. Sorry if next week's episode's a little late, but I'll also throw myself before you on that episode. Anyway, wasting time, super long episode. Let's get into it. Superman number 43, written by Luen Yang, art by John Romita Jr. So last issue we had Superman going off against the Hoarder Root, and then some mysterious figure came in as he was going mid-solar flare and just stopped it. This issue picks up with him waking up in Lois Lane's apartment. Lois is actually in bed with him, like, she's fully clothed. He's not. And he's like, where am I? What's going on? She's like, oh, don't worry, you're safe. And in walks Jimmy and Candice, and they're like, oh, yeah, hey, you've been out for like over a day. We were just letting you rest up. And he's like, okay, cool. Where's my clothes? And Jimmy's like, hey, don't worry about it. We're all adults here, except for Candice, who's like, yeah, I can tell why you're the Superman. Wink, 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 wink. So we see that Jimmy feels pretty upset because as Lois goes off to like make breakfast or whatever, Jimmy thinks that he might be responsible for leaking Superman's identity to Hoarder. He's not sure how he would have done it, but he thinks that maybe he was just careless at some point. And Candice is like, no. Hoarder already knew. It had nothing to do with you, man. So Jimmy starts to feel sick. She escorts him over to the bathroom, and Clark and Lois just have a talk where she starts questioning as a journalist. She's like, so you got a new power. Is that like a new thing? Are you going to be able to stay in control of that all the time? And also, like, why did you pick Metropolis as Superman? All this other stuff. And Clark's like, what? Where is this coming from? What are you doing? And she mentions how when she was seeing all the pictures from Hoarder, she saw a picture from Grant Morrison's Action Comics run where Clark was strapped down in an electric chair because of her father and Lex Luthor. And she was like, I knew it happened, but I had never seen it before. And it's like really upsetting because they had questions they wanted answers to, and they were willing to brutalize you for it. I'm not going to do that. I don't want to do that because you are my friend, Clark. And so I'm going to keep your secret identity safe. And he's like, that's great. I am happy to have you on both sides of my life now, Lois. That's fantastic. But she even says, like, along the lines of like, yeah, you know, I almost fell in love with you. And he's like, I've got a girlfriend. I don't like this. And she's like, no. I'm just letting the audience know that was a thing, but it's not a thing anymore. Couldn't be, because we're both in relationships, so we're just friends. And then Clark says, Lois, can you do one thing for me? Take this fork and stab me. So we cut over to Jimmy, who's finishing up hurling, and we see he doesn't notice, Candice doesn't notice, but a tiny little robot thing comes out of the toilet and starts marching its way into the bedroom where Lois and Clark are. And we see that Lois did stab Clark. He was checking to see if his powers had come back, but they haven't yet. He was able to get stabbed. And he's like, That's weird. There was somebody who stopped me from fully solar flaring, and it felt like they were siphoning off my power. Let's not tell Jimmy about that yet. I don't know why I'm not up to full strength. I should be, but I think it has to do with him. And then all of a sudden, Lois notices this little android, which has picked up her phone and, like, stuck it onto its head. And then, wouldn't you know it, Hoarder Root comes in saying, hey, how's it going? You really messed up my plans and all that. You got rid of a whole bunch of data, but I still have the evidence that Clark Kent is Superman, and I can still leak that wherever. So... Also, the reason Jimmy threw up the robot was because he took a latte in the last issue. So, ha ha ha. So anyway, he transmits over some coordinates. Lois tries smashing the phone, and Clark's just like, whoa, hold on. Nope, I need those coordinates. Otherwise, he's going to do some stuff. And Lois is a bit unsure at first. Like, what do you mean you're going to be doing what he says? But she's like, okay, you go buy some time by doing whatever he wants. I will look for answers. And Clark's like, no, this is my problem, and I'm not going to let you do it. And he's like, ah-da-da. You said both sides of your life, Clark, so... And besides, I was going to follow you anyway. So we see them go out on the road, follow the coordinates, and turns out it leads into some sort of desert. Road just ends, but the coordinates are still a mile away, so Superman grabs hold of Lois and does one great big leap onto the mountain range nearby. And we see some robots are waiting for... Superman to show up. Lois is like, go, I will sneak in otherwise, don't worry about me. So Clark jumps in, and the robots try to restrain him, and he's like, oh, are you kidding me? I'm still Superman. He just yanks their arms away, and out steps Hoarder, or another drone of his, and he's like, you have to deal with our arrangement, you gotta come peacefully. And so he allows himself to be bound up, and we see Lois uses one of the counterfeit masks to break her way in. Inside, as she looks around, she sees some woman who's been part of the group. I don't know who it is. And she's saying like, oh, the one we've been waiting for is here. Come on, we got to go. And so they're all going off to see Superman. Meanwhile, we see Lois checks out where they were coming from, and it seems to be someone who was tortured or something in something that seems like an electric chair. Lois starts taking pictures, and she's like, oh, this reminds me of the thing I mentioned before with Superman in the chair. And then we cut over to Superman in an identical chair. And Hoarder's like, all right, well, here's the deal. I want to know how your solar flare works. And I've got a whole bunch of robots coming in. They are fully capable of absorbing as much energy as you can put out. So let loose. And I'm just going to study how your thing works. And Clark's like, no. And he's like, okay, well... here's all the people whose lives would be ruined if I let your identity out. This is, all their lives would go to absolute shit. And so Superman's like, all right, fine. So he starts blasting his solar flare. Lois comes to the window and is just like, Superman, can you hear me? Hey, don't do what you're gonna do. I just posted your identity online. Hoarder has nothing over you anymore. And we see all around the world, Times Square, every video billboard, it's the same image of Superman opening up the shirt. Justice League seeing it too. And Superman's like, all right, fine, fair enough. So he crunches the chair and then just starts beating up all of the robots. Some of the robots come after Lois. Superman just crushes those as well. And we cut over to Hoarder, who's just like, all right, well, bye. And he just teleports or fades out, whatever it is. Superman goes up to Lois and is like, why did you do that? You had absolutely no right. And she's like, look, we'll figure this out. We're best buddies. Lois and Clark will make it work. It's all good. And he's like, no, do you have any idea what I could have revealed my own identity if I wanted to, but you just put a bunch of other people's lives at risk in order to do that. And she's like, oh, you would have put God knows how many lives at risk if it was me in danger. Don't act like you're above it all or whatever. And then all of a sudden there's a helicopter above. It's General Sam Lane. And he's like, hey, Superman / Clark Kent, we've got kryptonite bullets and we will shoot you. Get away from my daughter. And Superman's like, you know what, Lois? I was wrong. I only liked you in part of my life. And he jumps away into the darkness. That's the issue. I gotta say, I knew the reveal was coming. I knew that, like, Lois revealed the identity. This has been established over the other books that have been going on. Lois established the identity, and I knew it would be coming in the main Superman book. However, it does feel a little unearned. Like, it's not like it's a bad moment in its own right, but, like, especially here where Hoarder's like, I just want to learn more about your solar flare power. Like, no one's in danger. There's no, like, civilian lives here that are going to be at risk. Yes, him knowing and having, like, solar flare levels of energy or whatever could be an issue, but, like, I don't know. It just feels like the weakest reason to leak the identity. So, yeah. I mean, it's not a horrible moment. JR's art's iffy, to say the least, but it's okay. I guess it's like a 7. It's all right. It reads a lot faster than a lot of the other issues, and that's just because it's a lot of action scenes. So, yeah, I'll just say it's a 7 and call it there. JLA number 3, writing and art by Bryan Hitch. So this issue, we finally follow up on what happened to Barry and Hal. They were thrown through a Green Lantern portal and thought they were going to Oa, but all of a sudden they fall out and they are in the middle of a seemingly gladiatorial battle with a bunch of people in armor and shields and spears. And as they come tumbling out, they make their way past the whole of the battle, but they're immediately the people who were combating are like, what the hell was that? And they're like, what the hell is this? Where are we at? And they realize that the gravity on this planet is heavier than Oa. They're definitely not there. And they're trying to figure out what to do. And Barry's like, okay, get your ring charged. I'll try to take them all for a while. I'll try to distract. So he makes a big Speed Force, like whirlwind, running around in circles while Hal summons his battery, does the oath, and then makes a green boxing glove against every single one of the combatants to knock them down for a second. And as he looks up and around, he realizes Barry's gone again. And he's like, Ring, where the hell's Barry? He's like, Barry's not on the planet. And it's like, oh, cool. He just did some crazy Speed Force stuff. And it's like, yep. And it's like, all right, well, guess we're here. What planet is this? And the Ring scans and says, this is Krypton. You are 250,000 years in the past. To which Hal says, that's great. So we cut to Wonder Woman, who also was in, like, Olympus, except it's all broken up and floating in space. And she's like, I don't know what's going on here. But she looks over and finds an Oraculum, who's like a lion-headed griffin thing. And she's like, Oraculum, where's the gods? Who did all this? And it's like, oh, the gods left. They ran. They feared what was coming because, like, it's the end of everything. And Wonder Woman's like, what? Okay, that doesn't make sense. But, like, why didn't the gods tell me? I'm also a god. And they're like, I don't know. But regardless, Olympus is effectively destroyed, and there's an energy that is surrounding this place that was intended to trap the gods here, but it didn't quite work out. And Wonder Woman's like, okay, so now I'm trapped here. We don't know where the gods went. This sucks. We then cut back to Earth, and all the pundits are still like, Rao is so cool. He's the best. Oh, we're so happy Rao is here, and like all this cool stuff is happening. Check out this guy. And this guy steps up. He's like, I used to steal a lot of stuff, like all the time, but then Rao blessed me, and now I don't want to steal nothing anymore. And we cut to somewhere downtown where people are trying to collect for a charity to like end starvation in Africa. And nobody's donating everything, and it's because there are Rao's followers, like, right next door, who are actively healing people, like, right before people's eyes. And little Billy's like, Kevin is like, well, you know, instead of praying to, like, Christian God, maybe we should pray to Rao, because he's actually answering prayers. And then Rao shows up being like, yes, Kevin, tell me, what is it that you want? And he's like, can we check on the starving people in Africa? And so they do. They teleport over to Africa and say, like, these are the people you would want to save, and you're just collecting quarters. How much of that goes to really saving them, and how much is just to keep the charities running? And, like, the father there is just like, look, we do what we can. Like, we're not all powerful, unlike you, apparently, but, like, this is what we were able to do to give back. And it's just like, yes, but like your hope, your prayer is useless to these people. They need honest to God change. Kevin, I'm answering your prayer. What do you want to do here? Kevin's like, make this place like better. And so immediately Rao's like, all right, it's perfect. And he turns it all into this beautiful oasis, not even oasis, like it stretches on forever. Waterfalls and greenery and all this stuff. And the father's like, hey, Kevin, look, here's the thing. That's great. You're doing a great job there. But something we were trying to kind of shield you from is that a lot of the African problems are corruption and warlords and stuff like that. They're still going to have problems with that. And Rao's like, all right, fair enough. Kevin, you want to help deal with that? And then the news is basically just saying, like, yeah, Rao just went all over Africa, ending every single corrupt government that was there. So he's neat. And we see that the UN is looking at that and they're like, okay, he's ending corrupt governments. Do we have to worry? Should we be worried? Like, what happens if we don't fit this narrow definition of good government that Rao's got going on there? Maybe we just contact him, tell him to slow his roll a little bit. Or better yet, just stop until we can work out, like, exactly what the game plan is moving forward. And Rao just teleports in like, I'm not going to stop. I ain't ever going to stop. I don't know why you think you can tell me that I can stop. And they're like, well, what if we insist? And he's just like, well, yeah, I'm going to have to be a little bit more forceful. So we cut over to Batman, who's up on a rooftop. Superman comes up saying like, hey, Batman, you want to see me? And he's like, yeah, look, I just wanted to like talk to you about Rao before I took this into my own hands. And Superman's like, what do you mean take it? What are you talking about? And he's like, look, I'm going to find out the truth about Rao. Like, whether you like it or not, I just want to make sure you're cool about that because you used to symbolize truth and now I'm not so sure. Superman's like, dude, come on, don't be like that, you're being emo. I don't like that. I'm still the same Superman, and Rao is a genuinely cool guy. Look at how much everyone on Earth loves him. It's like, yeah, because you told everyone on Earth to love him. You got in front of the cameras as Superman, beloved Superman, and said, hey, this is my god and he's super chill. And Superman's like, look, but he's doing a better job, like he's making things better for everybody. He's like, look, trust is in your DNA, not mine. You see that guy down there? He was the guy who was on the news saying that he stole stuff before. I'm going to go check in on him. I'm going to go make sure that he is actually, quote unquote, cured. And I'll see what I can believe. And he's like, believe in Rao? And he's like, no, I'll believe in you. So we cut over to whatever the name and place was, Infinity Incorporated or whatever it was. It turns out they are, for some reason, in September 1961, according to their big old stones. It's giving off some sort of energy. I'll be honest, this entire sequence just kind of went over my head. I'm not entirely sure, but the stones are apparently keeping them informed. And then all of a sudden they start reacting to something. And they think it's bringing through another Superman, but then Flash comes through. And everyone's like, huh, okay. So Hal's back on Krypton, and he's like, okay, so the Speed Force energy messed with the wormhole and sent us back in time to ancient Krypton. And the Ring's like, yep. And it's like, all right, why here? And so he's like, all right, so open a wormhole to Oa so I can get to the Oa of this time. And it's like, oh, there is an unknown temporal energy causing interference. And it's like, okay, where's that interference coming from? Unknown. You're doing great, Ring. So he's like, all right, do this the old-fashioned way. And he goes to fly off the planet. But then all of a sudden the Kryptonians are calling out. And he's like, Ring, translate. And they're basically saying, wait, hold up, don't leave. And it's like, okay, hey, everyone, this isn't really my time or my jurisdiction. I shouldn't be here. And then they call up and they translate one more time and it says, you're a Green Lantern? And he's like, oh, you guys have heard of Green Lanterns? And it's like, oh, yes, of course. Our holy Citadel, the master in the Citadel would be honored if you talked with them. And Hal's like, oh, of course, totally. Hey, Ring, is that where the interference is coming from? And it's like, I don't know. It seems to be a planet-wide thing. It's like, yeah, you're doing great. All right, fine, I'll start at the Citadel. So all the gladiatorial people just lead them over and they say, oh, thank you, Green Lantern. Come with us to Kandor and you will meet our great god, Rao. Oh my god, who would have thought Rao was on Krypton when they explicitly said that he was on Krypton? That's insane. Yeah. I like that we are following through with the Barry and Hal stuff. Obviously, this is going to be important. But it does feel like it's going to be on the same level of importance as the Aquaman stuff, which is to say, not very much. It seems a lot more like we're focusing on what is going on like main Earth at the moment. It seems like whatever is happening here between all the Justice League members is meant to divide them up, split them into various different times, locations, places like that. And I'm sure they'll all come to overcome and like figure out all these things separately and then come together a la season 1 of Stranger Things or something like that. So yeah, it's not a bad issue, but I will say between this and the last issue, I don't know Bryan Hitch's politics. I don't care to know Bryan Hitch's politics. It really doesn't matter. But this does feel a little bit like proselytizing. This does feel a little bit of like, not saying, specifically of like, oh, all those charities or whatever are a scam and like you should be going out and doing action. Like that's the more important thing here. I don't think that's the point we're getting across. But it does feel like if you were to give Bryan Hitch unlimited power, this is exactly how he would do things. this is how he would like improve the world. I feel like we're seeing his roadmap here. And it's not, again, it's not a political thing inherently, but like, I am curious if this is just a reflection of his worldview. And it feels like we're going so in depth with like the nitty gritty details. It is Bryan kind of coming out and saying like, yeah, but no, I've really thought about this. Like, well, check that. Who wants to read my manifesto? Like, we're edging on that territory. We're not quite there, but like, I just want to make sure that we're not equating the villain plan, because obviously Rao is the villain. I still don't know why we're pretending he's not. I just want to make sure I'm not equating that with things Brian Hitch thinks are good, because there is an issue when you do that. Collectively, it is very nicely drawn. I like the art. It's just a little bit of a pacing issue for me. So I'm going to say 7.5. Call it there. Grayson, number 11, written by Tim Seeley and Tom King, art by Mikel Janin. So last issue we had a imposter. Grayson is attacking Agent Juan and has been killing people and making it look like Dick Grayson has been doing it. We open up with Agent Juan, Tony, still being attacked by the imposter Grayson, who I really don't have, but Nemesis is the name the arc gives it, so I'll say that. And saying like, go ahead, tell her who the traitor is, call into Helena, say who it is, and Tony's like, screw you, I'm not talking to anybody. And it's just like, all right, fair enough. And so smacks Tony in the back of the head. Mind you, Nemesis is all bloodied up as well, so it's easy to tell that there has been a fight here. But as Tiger is about to go down, we see another Eskrima comes in, knocks it out of Nemesis's hand, and then Grayson's like, I've never seen myself from behind before. I don't see what all the big fuss is about. And immediately we just get like 4 straight pages of just witty banter from Grayson, where he's just like, let me guess, Clayface. And we see the fight's just continuing on, and it trades a little bit as to who's doing what. And he's like, of course it's Clayface, it's always Clayface. So we get this whole thing of like, oh no, I can't believe this person has betrayed me despite me knowing them so well. And then it's always revealed to be Clayface. But just once I want it to be Killer Croc. Can you just imagine you pull off the mask and Killer Croc's just like, haha, it was me. Bet you didn't expect it because of the snout, right? But yeah, it was me. But it never is, because that's not what Croc does. And we see that as he kicks it down, he realizes it isn't Clayface either. And as he's saying this, the fight continues. He's getting a few more punches in, and he's just overly cocky at this point because he's landing more and more hits. He's like, let me guess. If you're not Clayface, you're actually secretly Wonder Woman. You're Wonder Woman, and this is you saying that you're just sick of superheroes, and that's why you went for the less strong, less popular, less super, generally less in every aspect. Just me. That's why you went for me, right? And how about instead of killing people, we just go out for like a donut or something? Like, why do we always got to keep punching each other, And he leans in and like gets face to face with Nemesis and says, so if you are Wonder Woman, how about a kiss? And then he ends up headbutting his clone, whatever, and saying like, oh, well, wanted to kiss and started headbutting instead. It's pretty much every crush I've ever had. And this is where the Nemesis is like, yeah, Barbara might agree, or maybe Corey. I think they both agree that she would have headbutted you instead. And immediately Grayson goes on the back foot. He's like, I'm sorry, what? What did you just say? And Nemesis then comes out, and he's also throwing out banter, but his hits a lot deeper. He's like, you keep on trying to guess who I am. But what about you? Maybe I should be guessing who you are. Are you Robin? Are you Nightwing? Are you Agent 37? And Grayson keeps on saying like, okay, that's enough. Shut up. Like, shut up now. He's just like, oh, that's right. You're none of them. And you're all of them. Like, you have no identity to yourself. And how could you not know who I am? And Grayson this whole time was just like, how do you know about me? Who are you? Tell me who you are. He's getting more and more angry as the fight progresses, which causes Nemesis to get more cocky himself. And he's like, even when you wore the cowl, you were pretending to be somebody else. You really just do not have any identity except for the scared little kid who's still playing on the circus floor, just dancing around and pretending like everything's okay. Tell me, what one-liner did you use when Jason died? When Barbara got shot, did you have a little quip for that? What about when Damian was sliding down the sword? Did you have a pun for that one? You keep on this air of you're just so in control all the time, but you have not had any control ever since your childhood. And when it finally comes to your funeral and everyone's just standing around crying because they all realize that you lied to them for their entire lives, what joke are you gonna tell? And Grayson's just like, all right, I need you to shut up now. And he finally is like, oh, hold on, but there's the big one. There's the most recent one, which is Agent 8. Tiger's partner. You slept with her, and then you watched her die. You let her die on that roof, and when he came up to the body, he held her the same way that you held her just a few hours earlier. And what did you tell Agent 1 then? Was it hilarious? I bet it was funny. And Grayson immediately like, all right, I'm done with this. And he charges in, but then Nemesis just holds out a hand and says stop. And we see the hypnos kicks in and Grayson is unable to move. And just like, you were so focused on having your little fun or whatever. You've been laughing. You didn't even see you were losing the whole time. And we see Nemesis is able to just vocally command Grayson through the hypnos implant, saying like, yeah, all we need you to do is get a little emotional, just a tiny bit unfocused, and that's the way that you can break in. Like, when they put the hypnos in your eye, did they tell you that they could see everything you were doing, that they could command you like this? They could say something like, take your little ice cream stick and throw it at your partner. And so he does. He throws it at Tiger, just like knocks his arm numb, dislocated. And just like, there you are, you did it. You didn't even question it. You have no control over all this because whoever you were, you never knew who you were. And we see Grayson is just like visually in the hypnos. He's moving through. He's like, you're not Robin. You're not Nightwing. You're not even Agent 37. You're just tonight's entertainment. That's all you are to them. And that's all they want you to be. And what do I want? As long as you're here, surrounded by all these skulls in this crypt. And the Nemesis says Tsuchigomo, which is the thing that knocks out Grayson, and he just falls unconscious to the ground. And we see Tony, Tiger, has finally woken up, and he has ripped out his hypnos implants from his eyes. And he says, 37 is weak. I am not weak. Even without my implants, I could take you out, and I will see you for who you truly are, and I will kill you. And as he looks up, he sees that the person he is facing against is Agent 8, his old partner. Fast forward. We don't know what happens. Fast forward. Tony and Grayson are standing in front of Helena, basically explaining what happened. Agent 1 says that the operative, the other person, was actually Maxwell Lord of Checkmate, and just like, yeah, it was him. He was the one. He was framing Grayson. I don't know why. And Helena's like, damn, that makes a lot of sense. All right, well, we should have been on top of that. You guys get back out there. We'll do what we can. We'll strike back at them. And Grayson's like, no, I'm done. I don't want anything more to do with this. I was showing some pretty harsh truths in there, and I'm done. And he starts to walk away, and Helena's like, look, if you want to stop me, or Helena says to stop, or Helena says Dick, and then Dick turns around and says, if you want me to stop, you could just say it. You could just stop me anytime you wanted, right? You could always have done that. I'm out. And so he walks away. He hops on the radio, and he calls over. He's like, I don't know why you're not answering me, Mr. Matches. I don't get it. I don't know why you're not there, but the mission is over. And I don't care what anyone else says. I know who I am. You're Batman, and I'm coming home. And then we get one last little page, which shows Agent 8 walking around with Dr. Netz and saying like, oh, man, that I know that Agent 1 will do what he says he'd do. He's going to blame Maxwell Lord. That's fine. And Netz is like, oh, yeah, that's great, Agent 8. He would be proud. And we didn't know that Grayson would interrupt everything, but it all worked out in the end. And Dr. Netz says, when we were girls, my sister and I would fight over our toys, and it would always just escalate and escalate. Now, Agent Zero and I are all grown up. But really, what's changed? All that's missing is my father yelling at us to fight harder. So, yeah. I mean, here's the thing. It's a twist. It's a big thing. It really gets to a big point. Over the last few issues, obviously the Nemesis has been a big focus there, but like, even if I don't understand what the larger plan is, I'm so invested. Like, I'm so into it. I kind of feel like Grayson saying that he's going home, it makes perfect sense for the character in the moment, but like, I almost don't want it to be there because I'm so invested in the mystery of like what's going on with Spiral that I don't want to even entertain the idea that Grayson's not going to continue down that path. Like, I'm sure we'll get back to it. There are like 2 more volumes of this book, even if they are ridiculously small, but like, I just want to keep going, you know? I just wanted to keep going. Who knows? Maybe we won't actually get any answers there, in which case, boy, I hope they pick it up somewhere else. But as it stands, I'm going to say this is a really fantastic book. I'm going to say this is a 9, honestly. Like, it plays with panels, it plays with layouts, the characterization's great, and it just does a great job of really, really drawing you in. So yeah, 9. Prez number 3, written by Mark Russell, art by Ben Caldwell. So last issue, Beth was officially nominated and elected as President of the United States. And this issue is kind of just a leading up to and including the inauguration issue, and it's hitting on a few separate things here. One major component to this that we cut through is the equivalency of what Amazon is. It's called Smiley Corp, and we follow a worker in that company and just how disposable he is. So we see all the news stuff going on, and apparently Beth's grandmother is seeing the news and buys her a little gift from Smiley Corp of a sexy frog toy. And we see the order of things where the Amazon warehouse at Smiley Corp, there's a guy named Manny who falls under some boxes. He injures his leg a little bit. He's sent to the infirmary where the doctor just, as soon as he opens the door, says, "Oh, you look fine, get back to work." And so he's put back on duty. We see that there is all these timers put in place, and he ends up being like 8 seconds shy of putting a box on the line, and it penalizes him for it. He goes to the bathroom, and he's immediately timed on that. And everywhere, there's these huge smiley face posters saying like, "Every second counts, and believe us, we're counting." And we see he's got like 90 seconds on a bathroom break where he's playing a little cat puzzle game. But we cut away from that, and we cut over to Beth, who's on her front lawn. She gets approached by some skeevy-looking guy who's like, "Hello, I'm a venture capitalist, and I would like to make a deal with you, Beth Ross." And she's like, "You seem weird, and I don't want to talk to you." And she's like, "All right, well, think about this. When you get elected, you only get 1 pass at the buffet. In 4 years, you're going to be left dipping corn dogs again. But what if I could make you rich after you leave the office?" And she's like, "This seems extra skeevy now." And she's like, "Look, there are betting odds on whether or not you're going to be assassinated or like going to commit suicide or any of that sort of stuff. So you let me take out a massive life insurance policy on you, and I'll get paid if you die. But if you don't, I'll end up paying you like $40 million or whatever. How does that sound?" And she's like, "Secret Service agents who are now protecting me, can you shoot this guy?" And she claims that he's a vampire, and he's like, "Yeah, but have you ever seen a poor vampire?" And so Prez Rickard comes in. I don't know if his name's Prez in this, but Rickard comes in and starts shooing him off. And he's like, "Look, you really can't stay in that apartment. You got to get out of there." And he's like, "Oh, where else should we go?" And he says, "We're going to Washington." So we cut over to the senators who were talking, and they claim like, "Oh, all right, she picked Rickard as vice president. That's actually going to be able to protect her from being assassinated by at least the Washington people, because everyone hates Rickard. He's literally the worst." So we see the one guy who has a cybernetic eyeball or whatever. He's in on this meeting, and he's like, "What does this mean for my pork bill?" But we see that the anonymous group is hacking into his eyeball so that they can see what's going on in this senator meeting. And they're saying, "Well, as for President Corndog, still got a week before swearing in, and a lot can happen then." So we cut back to Smiley Corp, where the head of the company, Boss Smiley, the CEO, who again, for all these entrepreneurs, CEO types, it's just like a business suit and then a hologram of their company logo on their face. So the smiley face is introduced to the workers in this warehouse. He descends from the heavens and is literally being held up in the air as he's like, you know what? We as a company, we don't make anything. We don't sell anything that can't be bought somewhere else. Why do people come to us? It's because they get it cheaper and faster through us. And that faster is the more important part, because our main product here is time. We are the world's leading manufacturer of time. We work in seconds, not hours. The next person that says hours gets fired. And if anybody here tries to take a second for themselves, then you are literally draining the life force of our customers, and I will not stand for that. Anyway, have a nice day. And he just soars back off into the sky, and everyone's like, oh, okay. So Manny tries to take off for the rest of the day because his ankle's killing him. We then see Beth gets introduced to the communication system that's used by the NSA, which can literally just hack into any phone anywhere. And Rickard points out and says, hey, you do not owe anybody any favors. Whenever cabinets are assembled, it's always just the president paying off his favors. You get a labor secretary who's never worked a job, a transportation secretary who's never taken a bus, but you don't owe any favors. You can actually staff with smart people. And so Beth gets in contact with the stand-in for Neil deGrasse Tyson, who is named Franklin Holyfield. There's a pun in that. I'll let you explore it. And he's giving a talk at a science hall or whatever, and he's like, yes, there's a bunch of meteors and they're always coming down to Earth and whatever. And the guy's like, I thought meteors were punishment for gay people. And Holyfield is like, no, that's not the case at all. In fact, it happened back in dinosaur times. And the guy's like, wow, them dinosaurs must have been kinky. To which point Beth pops onto the hologram screen and is just like, hey, would you like to be my science secretary? And he's like, yeah, no, I'm done with the public. Then we cut over to Mr. Wycheck, who I think is like a tech CEO or like someone who's very disillusioned with the system, because he's watching Smurfs with his daughter, and then he goes on this whole rant while like talking to his daughter about how Gargamel is actually just a stand-in for late stage capitalism. And she says like, you want to be my Secretary of State? So then we cut to the United Nations lunchroom, where there is a ambassador who's having fun. He's just sitting there and he's like trying to schmooze up with some people, and the people there are like, do you even care about what's happening in Fiji right now? Like there's a whole bombing thing going on. It's going on in the news right now. And he's like, what do I care about Fiji? I don't care. Like, it's no big deal for me. And then Beth pops over the phone and is just like, hey, Mr. Ambassador, you will no longer be needed in my new administration. We're going to be taking a different ambassador here. And he just walks over to the buffet and is just like, I'm going to miss you, buffet. So then we go on one of the news programs. We talk about a new pork act, and douchebag senators talking to the senator that's obviously just supposed to be the horrible liberal stand-in, and the douchebag senator is saying like, oh yes, this bill is great because it creates jobs and does all this stuff, but most importantly, it stops anyone having sexual predation with pigs. And the liberal one's like, is that really a problem? And he's just like, why are you trying so hard to defend the sexual attacks on these pigs? And the liberal one points out that this is literally just a bill that is going to allow for like pig farms to be built next to schools and create environmental nightmares. And the douchebag one just keeps coming back saying like, all right, I hear your points, fair enough, but here's a question for you. What is it about sexual congress with pigs that you find worth defending? And then the show ends it right there. So obviously the liberal one loses. We then come back to Manny, who is being brought into his manager's office and just like, hey, Manny, how you doing? Great. Anyway, you're not quite keeping up with productivity. It turns out you took an extra 4.3 seconds in the bathroom. And he's like, yeah, I had to go number 2. And he's just like, yeah, well, either way, we're going to have to let you go. And then we just see him sitting at the bus stop playing a puzzle game. He walks into a taco shop, gets hired there, has to put on an embarrassing uniform for his badge photo. And then we see him making his way past some payday loans. And as he sits on his porch with the rain coming down, he's like, what the hell just happened? So finally, we get the inauguration of Beth. And there's a bunch of people exercising their Second Amendment rights out in the audience. And she's a little bit freaked out about that. To which point they bring in a huge, like, drone robot looking thing, and it's just like, yeah, all right, don't worry, it's just for show, it's not actually going to kill anybody. So we see the person operating the drone is told to go on his lunch break. Douchebag Senator Thorne, that's his name, introduced himself to Beth, and Beth's like, oh, you're an acceptable looking older man. We see that as she's being sworn in and she starts giving her inaugural address, Anonymous has hacked its way into the robot, and now it's in control of that. All of the things with like Manny and things that we see going on like Fiji that have been mentioned over the issue are all mentioned in Beth's inaugural address, where she's basically saying, look, I know I'm not supposed to be here. I know this has all been a mistake, but like the world is messed up, and I think that people are just way too complacent about it, especially up top here. So as long as I'm here, I'm going to be trying to do the right thing. And yes, I might make mistakes, but I can guarantee you they will be new mistakes. They won't be the same mistakes that everyone has been making before. And we see Senator Thorne standing out in the audience. Some guy's about to exercise his Second Amendment right, and he immediately gets blown away by the drone that's being controlled by Anonymous. So no problems there. And we finally get one last panel of Beth sitting at the Oval Office desk. She gets a call from her grandma, and the grandma's like, oh, did you get the gift I sent you? And we see the sexy frog sitting on the front of the desk, and she's like, yeah, what is it? So it's the weakest issue of the book so far, but by any other standard, it's still a fantastic issue. It's filled with so much just personality the whole way through. The story of Manny, when we get the boss Smiley descending from the heavens and giving this speech about how productivity needs to stay up constantly, or else you are literally going to be killing people. It's so over the top, but it's got such a flavor to it. I love it so much. So yeah, I think, again, still being the weakest issue of the book, I'm still going to give it an 8. It's fantastic, and I am so sad that we're already halfway through this series. DC, bring this book back. The Flash number 43, written by Robert Venditti and Jensen, art by Brett Booth. So last issue was the annual, which was basically just saying, here's how Reverse Flash got his little gang, his compadres. And we open up that issue with the same thing, with them saying, hey, so we're so powerful, why do we have to like mess around with the Flash? Can't we just go kill him? And Zoom is just like, we could, but we have to break him down as an icon first, because he's just that evil. We have to remind everybody why they should hate him, because Flash sucks. And so we cut over to Flash, who is immediately, because of the last issue, he knows where his dad and the other criminals he broke out with are going to be. So he makes his way down there, and we see he's waiting as Barry, not as the Flash, when his dad and the other criminals arrive. And he's like, hey, Girder's not going to be joining you. We already took care of him. What the heck, man? What is going on here? I figured out you had an inside man, and I managed to get it all here. And then the other criminals charge Barry, and they're like, screw this kid. We know him as the guy who gets all the evidence to put also criminals away. Like, he deserves a good beating. And Barry's dad just fires a gun in the air and says, you back off right now. And just like, okay, Jesus, man, what's he to you? And he's like, he's my son. And they're like, oh, all right, I guess we'll just stand over here for a while. So Barry gives his dad a hug, and and his dad's freaking out, like, did you tell anyone I was here? Did you? And he's just like, Dad, I haven't been able to like see you at all behind, like, without glass separating us, and this is what you're gonna do? Did you tell anyone? No, I didn't. I just wanted us to talk. Like, the ballistics came back and it said that your gun was the one who shot that security guard. Did you do it? And he's like, no, I'm just talking a big game. I don't actually believe any of the stuff I'm saying. Like, I just have to work it out with these criminals. And I don't know how to explain it, but the gun just went off. And he's like, okay, fine, fair enough. But like, why did you break out of prison, man? I want you to get out of prison, but like the legal way. I want to exonerate you. Like, I told you I found a lead on Mom's killer, and he moved as fast as the Flash. Like, that's got to count for something. And immediately the dad's just like, drop it. You will not do anything about that. Forget it, and you run away. And Barry's like, but, I mean, look, if you want me to drop it, I will. But you got to come back with me. We got to talk to the police. You have to turn in yourself involuntarily. That is the only way that this is going to work out. And the dad's just like, no, like, look, I don't want you to be a part of this, but I have my own things to do as well. I'm no good to you anymore, even on the outside. You just go. And Barry's like, fine, I'll clear you myself. So he runs off. We see, I always forget his name. Henry sounds right. Dad's just like, all right, look, other criminals I'm with, if you stick around, I can get you as much money as you want, and I'll even give you a chance to get even. And they're in. They're immediately going for it. So Barry gets back home. Pied Piper's up Hartley, and he's just like, yeah, no, I was just making some music. Hey, Barry, you're kind of a night owl, right? And he's like, no, not really, just had some stuff to do. And he's like, oh, yeah, no, totally, I get it. By the way, as being Pied Piper, I have a history with vigilante justice. Don't do it. Let the police handle your dad's stuff. I know it's tempting, but, like, you really shouldn't. And he's like, no, I wasn't. It was stuff for Wally, and I'm going and meeting him at school tomorrow. And he's like, oh, you must have a thing for Iris if you're spending this much time with a nephew. And he's like, no, it's not like that. So it turns out Wally is in a car repair, automotive repair class, and he's made himself a little dune buggy, and it's, like, Flash themed. And he's tearing up the football lawn with how fast it's going. And the teacher's just like, that's amazing. And you made this all by yourself. And he's like, I did. And he sees Barry and Iris there. And they're like, did you see? And they're like, we did. And then all of a sudden, the football coach comes over and says, you tore up my entire football yard lawn thing. And Wally goes, I did. And so he says, you're going to put all the sod back piece by piece. And you're not going anywhere. And he gets right up in Wally's face. And Barry just comes over and pushes him away and says, back off. And points out that, like, it's 6 months until football season. It's going to be fine. So football guy charges off. Wally's like, thanks for the backup. Didn't need it, though. And he's like, yeah, no, totally. You're good. And Wally just explains, like, I've had this pent-up energy and this rage or whatever that I just needed to get out. And ever since I started the auto shop class, I've channeled it in there. Barry, maybe that's what you need to do, because I could tell you got some pent-up stuff going on. And he's like, yeah, totally. I'll get right on that. Anyway, I got to run. So we see he goes out and he's Flash. There's a call in from the police saying that there's a hostage situation and that they're going to start killing people unless they can talk to the Flash. And so he decides to zoom right over. We see it is absolutely, of course, the same criminals. It's his dad and whatnot. But he comes in as the Flash and he checks the hostages first. Turns out they're all mannequins. And so he's got a gun to his back of his head and saying, hey, we got to talk, Flash. And Flash just immediately disarms him, punches him across the room. And as he looks at the gun, he's like, wait a minute, that's the same gun my dad has. Oh, my God. And so he goes over, he unmasks his dad, and he's like, what are you doing, man? What's with all the mannequins? What kind of game is this? And he's like, I just needed to talk to me for a minute, man. And Jesus, that punch. Okay, look, my son is Barry Allen. He works for the police. You may be familiar. And Barry's like, yeah, sure. And he's like, yeah, well, his mom died. I took the rap for it, and that's fine. If that's what needs to happen, so be it. But the real killer, his name is Eobard Thawne. He is trouble. He is super fast like you, and he is back. And I need you to protect my son, even if that means killing Eobard Thawne. And Barry's like, okay, but why not just tell your son all this, assuming that you haven't, because I have assumed that you didn't. And he's like, he's a good kid, he can't handle this, but you're the Flash, you can handle it. And then the cops show up, they arrest the three of them again. So they're put into the car along with Captain Fry, and Captain Fry's talking to Henry, and it's just like, Henry, what were you thinking, man? Why are you doing that? And he's like, Thawne's out. And Fry's immediately like, oh, okay, all right, yeah, no, totally. How did you know, though? And he's like, oh, he got a word to me when I was in prison. I had to get out and try to protect Barry. I had to do whatever I could there. And even now, I don't know if it's going to be enough. But look, you raised him, and I kind of resent you for being his dad, but you are pretty much his dad. I need you to protect him as much as you can. And Daryl's like, yeah, of course. And then, what's her name? I think her name is Block from Zoom's thing, just stands in front of the police van. They're honking, and she just fully stops it, because that's what her power is. The rest of the gang comes out. They start unloading the police truck, and we see them say, oh, come along, Dr. Allen, your old friend wants to see you. And Flash comes in before they can do it, and just like, oh, not so fast. But then Folding Man comes in, and Folding Man's whole power is that he can fold through space and theoretically time, maybe. But he's like, yeah, I can go any distance I want. So he folds Flash up and then dumps him at the bottom of the ocean, to the point where, like, we see the really weird, like, goblin sharks and stuff like that. So how does Barry swim straight up when he can't run? I don't know. Find out next issue. I actually like this one. It's, look, art style completely ignoring that. I actually do like this one. I think the Wally bit was kind of an out of nowhere stuff, but the rest of the issue, I think was done very well, where Barry's looking for answers from his dad, and he shows himself as being capable, but the dad still just sees his young son who was traumatized by his mother's death. And then we cut over to the father turning to the Flash, and it's this kind of role reversal where he doesn't realize what he's asking for, and obviously that's theming. Like, that's nothing that's hidden there, but I like the way that they handle it. Yeah, the only other thing I would mildly critique is that they reintroduce these villains, the little gang that Thawne has, and they don't name any of them. The only reason I had Block and Folding Man is because I went back and looked for it in previous issues. So if you're introducing these characters, you should probably remind us a little more, but that's the only thing I really got to critique. So I'll say a 7.5 on this. I thought it was actually very well done. Gotham by Midnight, number 8, written by Ray Fawkes, art by Juan Ferreyra. So we had the annual last time, which was kind of just its own thing, but this issue picks up with Gotham Square, Times Square, hard to say, where we see a bunch of people just walking around. Dinah is in the crowd, and up on all the screens is a news network that has some talking head pundits that are talking about a bomb that went off and killed a bunch of people, and also some US journalists or whatever. And the talking heads are just going back and forth, getting more and more heated over whether or not the proper action is to basically drop a bomb on them as well, and all this other stuff. And Dinah is getting more and more upset, like, death is near. I feel it. You got it. Corrigan, get down here. Oh, that's right. If you come down into Gotham, everything's going to go to shit because you're a Spectre. Send in somebody. Send in the riot squad. I don't know, but something bad's about to happen. And we see a woman falls over. She's almost stepped on by another guy, and then says, like, you almost stepped on me. And he's like, the hell I did. She slaps him. Dinah immediately tries to get involved to break up the fight, but then another guy stops her, and then the entire crowd just breaks into pandemonium. Everyone is fighting everybody else. And one of the pundits is saying, oh, it's a world of vicious animals out there. There's two kind of animals, predators and prey. So we cut over to the zoo, where Kate Spencer is meeting up with Sergeant Rook, and it seems like, I believe, internal affairs on both. I don't know if Kate Spencer is. Sergeant Rook obviously was. And Kate's like, hey, I want you to tell me what's going on with Midnight Shift. What's going on? And Sergeant Rook is like, look, it's a solid case. I went in there and I saw some crazy stuff in that first act. You wouldn't believe. They're so weird. They almost killed me. I cannot even begin to describe it. And like, if this stuff goes in front of a grand jury, they're already dead. So we see Corrigan's meeting up with Dinah after the riot. 6 people died. 2 people are in the ICU. And she's like, what happened? Or he's like, what happened to him? What's going on down there? And she's like, I don't know. They all decided to just get angry. I don't know how better to say it. And then we see Pete comes in, who is the boyfriend of Dinah. And she calls him, he calls her Lisa. I can't remember if that's her actual name or what, if this is something else, like just using an alias, but regardless, he comes in and Corrigan's like, oh, hey, yeah, the boyfriend, heard so much about you, you're a good guy. And he's like, yeah, sure, likewise. All of a sudden, Corrigan gets a call from Dr. Tarr talking about what was going on at the riot. So Corrigan's like, I got a dip. I'm leaving her in your hands, boyfriend. And Pete's like, yeah, sure, thanks. So Tarr is down in the Gotham Square or whatever, is looking up with goggles saying like, oh, all these screens, there's so much residual energy on the screens. And as soon as Corrigan gets there, he immediately like gets a shock from the Spectre, and he's like, oh yeah, that's some psychic action. He's like, the screens, right? And he's like, no, not the screens, it's the broadcast itself. So they make their way to the news place, and we see that basically it's like, look, something about whatever went on there is what's causing this. And Tarr says that the 2 hosts are currently, they've been around for a while, but their ratings have recently gone through the roof. They've been on fire. So something's going on there. As they make their way through the news station, there's just blood splattering the walls, all this stuff going on, but not really any bodies. And as they make their way back into the broadcast room, we see Tarr saying like, hey, look, are you sure you should be like, I don't wants you to turn into the Spectre because then I'm like, I might be judged and I think I'm a good person, but I don't know by God's standards whether I'm good enough. And Corrigan's like, shut up, I hear somebody talking. And we see inside the pundit room, none of the cameras are rolling, nothing is going on, nobody is there except for some dead bodies in this room. But the pundits are still arguing. They're still just at each other's throats. And it's not even about anything anymore. They're just like calling each other horrible names. And we see Corrigan once again gets like the Spectre shock and he's trying to hold it back. Tarr pulls him back out of the room, puts him into a back like green room. And Corrigan's like, no, you're the one who's got to get out of here. I got to deal with this. This is Spectre stuff. And he's like, no, man, you killed people as a Spectre. Do you really want your conscience on that again? Or do you want to turn as Spectre and like, I just follow Sister Justine to my death? And he's like, no, that's not me. We're different. So he keeps him in the room, slams the door shut, and Tarr goes to deal with it on his own. We then cut over to Internal Affairs, where Casimiro has joined the case with Sergeant Brooke, and she is a lot more gung-ho. Just like, oh yeah, we got all these witnesses, we got all this extra stuff, we can bury them alive. And Rook's like, this seems way too easy. It's like, what do you mean this is too easy? Like, we started poking and all this came out. Like, this is the easiest thing that's ever been said here because they absolutely deserve it. And Rook's like, I don't know. Something about this just seems wrong. I'm smelling a setup here. This doesn't seem right. And Casimiro's like, look, you were hot as hell to bring them down yesterday. What changed? Like, did Corrigan come and threaten you? And he's like, no. But like, I just want to make sure we're doing this right, that this is going to be good. And Casimiro's just like, this is Gotham City, and the midnight shifts are killers. So we see Tarr goes in. We make sure that he has disconnected everything from like the broadcast. There's no cameras plugged in, anything like that. So nothing can even happen here. The pundits aren't even caring about him. They don't even see him there. And it's just like, excuse me, Mr. and Miss, could you please, whatever? And all of a sudden, the one pundit shouts as loud as he possibly can and just blasts Tarr back like across the room. But it fuels him with that primal anger, that rage. So while the pundits are going at each other, like literally at each other's throats, Tarr also comes in trying to join the fight. He swings a table at one of them. He lifts up the table. And when he pulls it back, he sees that the pundits are literally joined in this writhing tentacle mass just underneath the desk. They are literally one being. And the female pundit starts strangling out the male one, ends up killing him. And she's like, yes, finally, I did it. I won. But then she also, because they are joined as one being, starts to die. She can't breathe, and she just falls over dead. And Tarr's just left to watch. And so he goes back, he talks to Corrigan. Corrigan's just been sitting in the room, and he's like, hey, I can smell it. That smell is hell rot. It only happens when someone who's made a deal with a demon dies. So let me guess, they made a deal with the demon to do something? It's just like, yeah, they were some sort of weird monster thing. I don't know how to describe it. What is wrong with our world, man? It is so messed up. And Corrigan's like, I don't know, it's something. But then Tarr notices that where Corrigan's been sitting has a lot of these black orchid flowers that have been showing up since the beginning of the book. And he's like, wait a minute, hold on. Why are these here where you were rather than in the other room where the monster was? That doesn't make any sense. And he's like, wait a minute, hold on, bring me my toolbox. I think I have an idea. These orchids, they're a warning, and I'm getting the message now. So he bottles one up, and Corrigan starts driving away, and he's like, look, I don't know why the world is the way it is, but if we can hold all of these nightmares at bay, we have to, because nobody else can do it. And then as they arrive back at their HQ, we see that Internal Affairs have shown up, and they're just like, we've got warrants, we're going to go in there, and we're going to eat you alive. So, yeah, that's the issue. All right, let's talk about theming. The pundits are at opposite sides. They are arguing with each other, they hate each other, but they are part of one singular being. Both are fueling the rage and hysteria of the people, but they cannot survive without each other, and therefore neither can truly beat the other. Boy, howdy, are we doing some heavy-handed political commentary. Mind you, I love political commentary, so I'm happy with it. No, it's honestly, it's contributing to the overarching story. I think it's going to be moving forward in, obviously, this internal affairs thing, whatever's going on with Dinah. But when it comes to, her name is Lisa. It's Lisa Drake. I was getting Dinah Drake because of Black Canary. Her name's Lisa. That's on me. My bad. Lisa. Anyway, it's, it's got a good beat going to it. I really do like the message it's got. And I do like how we're giving Tarr this sort of crisis, this idea where he's a man of like science or whatever, he's a doctor, but he is forced to go up against these horrific things. And he's not just your mad scientist, he does have this moral backbone to him that's being put to the test. So yeah, no, it's just a solid issue. I think I'm going to say this one is solidly an 8. I really did enjoy this top to bottom. It's got some good art, some good theming, just solid issue. Deathstroke number 9, written by Tony S. Daniel and James Bonny, art by Eduardo Pansica. So last issue was technically the annual. Iapetus dropped them into a weird nightmare sequence, and they just spent the whole issue dealing with their inner turmoil. So this issue picks up, and they got out of their inner turmoil. And they're like, yeah, I have no idea how long I was in there, but there's a lot of dead Amazons lying around now, and that seems like an issue. So immediately, Wonder Woman and Deathstroke launch into the fray. They start attacking all of Iapetus's weird Onyx men. Iapetus hops in just like, oh yes, this is fruit born of the Pantheon's treachery, and he starts coming after all the Amazons. And we get a bit where Hesia's like, good to see you still alive, Deathstroke, because remember in our flashback last issue, I was also there as well. And he's like, yeah, we'll have to have a drink sometime. Anyway, I'm going to do something cool now. And he uses the sword, because the sword is so bloodthirsty, to cause a massive fiery explosion. Wonder Woman starts slashing through arms and stuff like that. We keep on getting glimpses of Themyscira from like far away, and then it's getting closer and closer and closer. Hesia calls down some lightning, because I guess she's just able to do that. And then Slade sees Iapetus just running away. And he's like, well, that's a problem. I'm going to go do that. So he goes off the battlefield into the woods, and he reasons off like, okay, there's no tactical reason for him to run away, so the battle must just be a diversion. And Iapetus is like, you're forgetting I can still read your mind, and I'm up in there. Yeah, that's right, Slade Wilson, aka Deathstroke. And Deathstroke's like, I don't like that, get out of my head. And he's like, no, I'm going to keep on doing that. Also, if you follow me, I will give you great power. And Deathstroke's like, yeah, but I got a cool sword that can kill you. And he's like, that sword can't kill me. Well, it's stupid. What are you thinking? Nah, okay, whatever, we're going to kill you anyway. So Deathstroke goes for a swing. It doesn't really land. Iapetus just knocks him halfway across the island. And he's like, all right, that was a problem, but whatever. And we see Iapetus is saying what his actual big plan is, which is he's going to go under Themyscira and get his quote-unquote beloved, which has been imprisoned down there for eons. So he's got some heat vision or fire breath or something like that, enough to make a huge hole in the ground. Wonder Woman's like, Iapetus, cut that out. And so she comes in, tries to go for a slash. Iapetus just grabs her by the throat and says, yeah, no, look, I really want to kill you, but like, I'm busy. And so he just throws Wonder Woman down to the ground, manages to dive into the hole, and as Wonder Woman tries to give chase, she's like blown away by the explosive force of him diving down. Deathstroke sees that happens. She's like, oh, she had my back in the weird nightmare thing. I'm going to go over and help her. And so he's running over with a sword primed, aimed at Wonder Woman, and then in comes the being that we've seen zooming towards the island at Mach speed. It's Superman. Superman sees a Deathstroke and just like, well, I don't know what you did, Deathstroke, but this all looks pretty bad. I'm going to kick your ass. And Deathstroke's like, oh, God, look, I don't have time to tell you everything that's happening here. He's like, you better make the time. So Superman and Deathstroke are now fighting. Apparently the sword, everything that Superman dishes out on Deathstroke, he's able to return twice as strong. And he's like, all right, I might be able to actually do something against Superman because of the sword. So he ends up throwing some big punches, and Deathstroke swatches him back. The sword then turns into a wrap that wraps around Superman. He's just like, look, I'm super happy to continue whooping your ass, but like, seriously, this doesn't need to go any further. And Superman's like, oh, yes, it does. And he blasts out of it. The sword reforms, goes back into Deathstroke's hand. They once again do some more slashing, and Deathstroke's finally like, oh, okay, he's not messing around anymore. Superman, you gotta understand, I'm on your side. And before he can say anything more, Superman's got him by the throat and is like about to straight up murder him. And he's like, oh, you're a psychopath and a murderer. tell me why you came here. And Deathstroke's like, I came to kill a god. And it's like, oh, well, my girlfriend's a god. You must have come to kill her. And that's where Wonder Woman finally gets up and just like, stop, he's on our side. And he's like, what? No, he's Deathstroke. Deathstroke sucks. And it's like, no, yeah, he does, but like not this time. He's a guy who sucks more. And they're like, okay, well, who could possibly suck more? And then explosion out of the ground, a whole bunch of magma is coming up with it. Iopsis flies up, laughing maniacally, holding a spear, and he says, behold, the future. And that's it. And it ends with a text box from Deathstroke saying, oh, shh, and that's it. So, I'll be honest, the text boxes from before, where Iopsis is saying, my beloved, you were imprisoned for so long under Themyscira, I'm coming to get you. I thought for sure, and it also says, my sister. I forgot that part. He says, my sister. I thought for sure we were going with like an evil goddess. We were going with the pairing here. You know, like that makes sense. You know, it's just, everything we said there. Instead, he comes out with a spear, and now I have to think, like, is this like a thing? Is this something in mythology where like he was created from whatever, and he had a spear with him from birth, and he's just, that's his sister? I'm sure we'll get an explanation, but it's so weird when it came out because I was 100% expecting a person. So I can't say that's a good or a bad twist. It's just weird. Beyond that, Superman's such a dope in this issue. Like, it's fine. This is the Deathstroke book. He's allowed to be an idiot, but I do dislike the idiot plot. I do dislike the fact that if Deathstroke had taken even like any point in there where he's just being a smartass to just for the sake of messing with Superman, if you just said, Superman, there's a different god that's also fighting against Wonder Woman, I'm on your side. That's it. That's all you got to say. You don't even say, Superman, I'm on your side, and then say the rest of that stuff, just to give him pause at the very least. But no, we have to be all stupid and dumb until the very last pages, because every hero has to fight when they come on page. So yeah, it's drawn very well. I think the issue itself is kind of just padding. It doesn't feel like a lot's really happening. It's just one big fight scene. It's two big fight scenes that are conjoined at the hip. So yeah, I'm gonna say this is probably I'll say 6.5. It's close to that 7 on art alone, but I don't know. I feel like if you, between the annual, which was definitely skippable, and this, which also feels pretty skippable, except for, and then Superman shows up, I don't feel like these past two issues have been much of anything. I feel like we're just trying to get to an issue count. So, yeah, 6.5. Batgirl number 43, written by Brendan Fletcher and Cameron Stewart, art by Babs Tarr. So, last issue really doesn't matter all that much. We didn't really, I think it was the annual, actually. Nothing really happened. This issue picks up with some guy working late. He's brewing himself a cup of coffee, and then all of a sudden the elevator opens up, and out steps an honest-to-God tiger. And he's like, what the hell is that? And then the tiger roars, starts chasing him down, and just absolutely mauls the guy. So we then cut over to Babs is working on Alicia's wedding. I guess that's a thing that happened in the last issue. She's now the maid of honor there, and they're having a great time. Just like, oh yeah, we knocked this all out. We got it all done super quick, because Babs just loves organizing stuff. And apparently Alicia met her fiance Joe. She is also a member of the same activist groups as Alicia, and it just goes off for a little bit, says like, yeah, you know, she's been awfully tired as of late. But Babs gets a call from Frankie saying, hey, a tiger attack happened. It happened at the Fawkes Tech building, which, you know, is a whole big thing. So maybe we could go check it out together. And Babs is like, nope, that's a Batgirl thing. You don't get to go out in the field. And so she says, all right, hey, I got to go. And she passes by Joe for just a second as she leaves. And Joe's just like, hey, yeah. And he's like, okay, get some sleep. So she goes over the Fawkes Tech building, and Luke Fawkes, of course, knows who she is. Just like, hey, Babs, you know, I appreciate you coming over, but like, this isn't really like Batman level stuff. Like, I can handle this. And she's just like, no, this is, we should at least be able to look into this stuff. So she starts running scans on the scanner for the elevator use. And just like, okay, well, tell me everything you know about the victim of the attack. And she's like, oh, he was a brand new hire. He was a brilliant worker. It sucks that it happened. And we see her and Luke are, getting a little friendly, just like saying like, oh, it's good to see you, all that sort of stuff. You've got a big heart on you, Luke. And we see next to them is Kadir, who's hiding around the corner, and he's seeing this happen, he's getting a little jealous, and then all of a sudden, scanner goes off. Turns out the last person to use the elevator when the tiger came out was Kadir, to which he hears this, comes around the corner and says, it wasn't me. I don't know what I didn't do this, Batgirl. And Luke's like, hey man, we don't know what's going on. How about you take the rest of the day off? Like, get out of here. And Batgirl's like, yeah, that's probably for the best. You go ahead. So they meet back out in the garage, and Kadir's like, no, seriously, it's got to be a mistake. And Batgirl's like, look, this isn't a password. This is biometric stuff. It's really hard to fake. But no, I don't think you're capable of this. And she reaches into the top of the garage and pulls down a bike that just expands in place. And she's like, all right, well, look, stay low. I'll figure this out. We see then she goes back to her university gig, and her Kadir's sister is like, there's no way my brother could have done it. It's all got to be a mistake. He wouldn't last 2 days in jail. And then all of a sudden they bump into Jeremy, their project leader guy, and he's a grumpy Gus. He is not a happy camper. To which the sister says, yeah, his ex came back into town. They had dinner. It didn't go well. So they pass by a TV news station saying there's been another tiger attack. It was another tech mogul startup business thing, to which Batgirl goes to the location and finds Frankie there. And Frankie's like, this isn't what it looks like. I was dropping off a resume, and there just also so happened to be a tiger attack here. I mean, clearly there's a job opening, but tis. And Batgirl's like, no, seriously, you are not a superhero. You can help me from home, but this part is my job. Don't do that. And Frankie gets all like, who made you? You can't tell me what to do. Fine, whatever. And then all of a sudden, Babs looks at her phone, realizes she's late to meet up with Alicia, and she's like, look, we'll continue this later. Just go home. So she goes out for wedding dress stuff with Alicia. Meanwhile, she's running a search on new hires at tech upstart places that live in Burnside, and it literally returns only one result. And she's like, hey, Alicia, that dress looks great. If you try on any more, just shoot them to me in a text, but I gotta go. And Alicia's like, yeah, I get it. Don't worry about it. It's all good. I'm pretty much done here anyway. Bye. So we go to this last girl whose name is Valerie, and the tiger's just there. It's peering over her cubicle, and so she starts running away from it, and that's about to catch up. Batgirl comes in, straight up suplexes the tiger. She gets slashed a little bit, causing the tiger to turn its attention back to Valerie. Batgirl throws a pink goo bomb thing that protects Valerie and causes the tiger to chase after her. She does some aerial flips and stuff and traps it into a glass cage office, so it's unable to escape. And she's able to look at the tiger long enough to see the tag inside the ear, and she's like, okay, cool, I'll just scan that. And it turns out that it's active, but it isn't registered anywhere, and she doesn't know what that means. So we cut back over to the apartment where Frankie's fixing Babs up, and Frankie's like, okay, all right, look, I did some more research. I didn't go out, but I did some research. The only person who was connected to all three of these people was Jeremy, was Grumpy Gus. He knew each of them, and I know he's not seeming like he's the kind of guy who could do this, but he's the only one that makes any sense here. And Babs was like, no, that's stupid. I just need to focus on where the tigers are coming from. It's not him. And Frankie's like, look, someone's got to follow up on this if you're not going to do it. And Babs like, I don't want to deal with this tonight. Good night. And she goes into her room, and Frankie looks over at the cowl and decides, yep, I'm going to put that on. So we see she goes and talks to Kadir, and Kadir's like, so you were working with Batgirl? And she's like, yeah, I'm the one who took out the whole computer AI thing. That was me. I did that. Anyway, I can prove you're innocent. You can get your job back. I just need you to make this cool electronic thing. And we don't get to see what it is, but it's, quote, special backup. So we then see Joe, Alicia's fiance, is sending a text to Alicia saying, hey, look, I'm sorry I didn't tell you about this before. We kind of, in our activism work, interrupted the trade of some illegal pets or animal trades or whatever, some of which were tigers. And so we've been trying to offload them, trying to get them into a place where they could be rescued. But those shipments were kind of falling through. And now I think somebody's trying to frame us as releasing these tigers to kill people. We didn't do it, but it looks like that. So I'm keeping you out of this to keep you safe. I don't know who's up to this, but I'm going to make it right. And we see she's basically just going out to feed the tigers this whole time. And then all of a sudden she's like, all right, no one else deserves to live this way, tigers. And then we see someone sneaks up from behind and says, oh yeah. And they grab Joe by the throat, and it's a lady dressed like a tiger. I mean, she's got like claws and orange skin and stuff, which makes me think she actually has like tiger powers, but I don't know who this is. And she's like, yeah, she says, someone once said better to live 1 year as a tiger than 100 as a sheep. Okay. No, I like the through line. Babs is busy with like all these different things, balancing her life as Batgirl and Babs, and like we've done that plot before, but it works. It's a good plot to come back to. It's working in here as well. I like how we're using the supporting cast a bit more. We're pushing them a bit farther forward and giving them things to do rather than just sitting there and saying, boy, Babs, isn't that Batgirl super awesome? Like, you know, that's a lot of times what these books end up doing with their supporting cast. So all that good. Tiger thing is interesting. Tiger woman thing is weird. I'm not sure. Like, I don't see any way that we get to the end of this and say, yes, you were trying to save the tigers, but I'm going to frame you and use the tigers to kill tech startup people. And also, however Jeremy ties into this. Maybe he's the Tiger Woman. He's just really good at drag. I don't know. So I guess we'll see how it works out. But for me, it just seems like a bit of a weird cliffhanger to introduce this completely new villain that's tied into the Tiger fact rather than someone who's, I guess, against tech stuff. Or maybe that's her bit. I don't know. 7.5. It's fine. It's good. I like it. It's a quick and easy read. Cyborg number 2, written by David F. Walker, art by Ivan Reis. So last issue we introduced that Cyborg is going through some changes. There's something going on with his body, and also there's 2 rival factions called the Tech Breakers and the Techno Sapiens. Sure. So we open up with the Tech Breakers. They come through a portal into some place else, and they're like, yeah, it was an ambush. We were fighting the Techno Sapiens, and it was a massacre. We're totally dead. And we see one of the Tech Breakers comes and talks to this woman in a wheelchair that I don't think we know about, and she's like, oh, I told you so. I told you it was bad. And it's like, shut up. I don't want to deal with it right now. And basically the conversation is to establish that they needed to convince Cyborg to join their side, not just needing his tech, but to join their side, because if any of the tech that is a part of Cyborg falls into the hands of the Techno Sapiens, they say the enemy, but I'm assuming it's the Techno Sapiens, then it means that not only will another planet fall to their thing, but a whole other universe will as well. So we're dealing with multiple universes. We then see Cyborg is running, sprinting, and then he gets into this huge fight with a bunch of Techno Sapiens, and he's talking in his narration about, like, a lot of people try to dodge around the fact of, like, what I am. They ask if I know Batman or Aquaman or whatever, but the ones who do talk about me, they're not subtle. Like, they ask whether or not I eat, and I say yes. They ask whether or not I poop, and then I make a joke, and they don't believe the joke, and they don't believe me when I tell the truth either. They ask me about sex, and I don't answer those questions. But the big one they ask me about is, do I sleep? And I say yes. And then they ask, do I dream? And I don't know. But we see that this entire thing of him fighting Techno Sapiens is all just a nightmare. And he's like, well, that was something. And so he wakes up. He's got a couple urgent emails from his dad, and he's just like, nah, put that off. I need coffee first. So he goes, and I'm not even sure where he's at. I think it's his childhood home. And his cat's like rubbing up on him, and he's like, oh, Smokey, it's good to see you. So we then cut over to Bobby, and Bobby was in the first issue. He was one of the protesters outside Star Labs, and we see he's an amputee, but he's shaving his face, and he's like, all right, all new you, start today. And we see he goes down to this auto body shop, and he gives a password and has a card or whatever, and just like, all right, yep, come on in, down the stairs. And we see underneath this auto body shop is a body shop, quote unquote, that does some sort of cybernetic operations or whatever on people. And so Bobby gets all prepped and they're like, yeah, we're going to reform your arm. It shouldn't take that bad. We're going to also do your eye. That might take longer, but do you have someone to pick you up after the procedure? And he's like, yeah, totally. So Cyborg's sitting outside petting his cat, and then he's trying to concentrate on forcing his body to do what he wants to do, because it looks like it's flesh, but then he concentrates and it turns into his sonic cannon. He's like, okay, all right, so I do have control over this. It's a neurolink. Let's see what else I can do. And so he gets up and he starts forming his body into all these different ways, and the cat's just like, meow, and he's like, yeah, I know, you're not interested in this. Sorry to bore you, but I just have to figure out what's going on with me. And his dad sends another message. He's like, all right, fine, I'm on my way. We cut to a distant planet where the Technosapiens are just killing a lot of people and talking about how there's all these songs being sung and they're all discordant or whatever, and we will find the perfect song and force everyone else to sing it as well. Whatever. So Cyborg goes to Star Labs and he's working on a whole bunch of robot drone things that are there, and he's like, yeah, look, I know you guys have been running scans and stuff like that, and that I'm some sort of experiment to you, but this is my body. I want to find out more about it. And I know I've forgotten a lot more than you guys would even know. So I'm going to work on these droids. I'm going to change them a little bit to do what I need them to do. And Silas is like, those things are worth multi-million dollars. Please do not break them. And he's like, I make no guarantees. So we come back over to Bobby, who's been picked up by Sebastian, who was buddy-buddy with Cyborg last issue. And Sebastian's like, dude, I can't believe you went through with it. Like, they might make this stuff illegal in Congress soon. Like, what are you doing? He's like, oh, I finally feel whole again. And he's got a whole metal arm ingratiated with like blood and veins and stuff. He's got a cybernetic eye, and he's like, this is the right of the people to do this to their body. And so Sebastian brings him home, and he's like, yeah, I'm doing fine. I just got, and he just passes out. So Sebastian calls up Cyborg and is like, hey man, we should hang out. I gotta tell you about something. So we see Cyborg is doing a fight against all the droids. He's having them record data, all that other stuff. And Silas and the rest of the Star Labs crew are like, he's just showing off. And he's like, I can hear you. That's not showing off. This is showing off. And he blasts the ground with a sonic cannon. Everyone's like mildly impressed until Silas comes down and says, like, do you have any idea how much you damage? Like, this is God knows how many millions of dollars of damage. And Cyborg's like, I'll fix your precious robots if that's what you're concerned about. And look, they were crap anyway to start with. And he just yanks out a gyroscopic stabilizer and just like, this thing couldn't handle all the rapid movements, and I'll fix it up if it's so important to you. Anyway, I'm going to go figure out what's making me even less than human. No big deal. So he walks off. We see he's outside. He's taking some pictures of kids who wanted to take some pictures with him. There's a little bit of what I feel like is a continuity error. I guess you could argue the point where he says, after the accident, I hated going out in public, but being a member of the Justice League made it a little easier. Well, in the context of the accident happening, like, the accident happened and then he immediately was a Justice Leaguer. There was no in-between. He just was. So, I don't know. Regardless, he's talking to Sebastian, and Sebastian's like, yeah, man, this city, Detroit, is changing so much. I don't even recognize that anymore. But most of the industries are still body shops. And Cyborg's like, what's a body shop? And he's like, are you kidding me? You don't know? It's cybernetics, like all that stuff being done, the prostheses or whatever. But there's a whole thing in Congress where it might be illegal soon. And like, we don't know how we're dealing with that. But no one is anywhere near as much high-tech stuff as you, though, Cyborg. And then all of a sudden, Cyborg's little red light on his forehead starts blinking blue. He's got a massive migraine. We see Bobby is also waking up, and Cyborg's like, oh, it's a signal. It's like reaching out. It's looking for something. And he flashes back to his dream from last night, and he's like, that wasn't a dream. That was a signal or a warning or something, and it was letting me know that they are coming. And we see Bobby is being attacked by a bunch of Technosapiens. Because why not? Okay. First issue. Probably really my only issue. The Technosapien Techbreaker stuff. They don't say either of those names in this issue. I had to get it just by reading issue 1 and the sneak peek again and just leaping through that. So already we've got an issue where you're introducing these different factions and you're not quite ingratiating them with the audience so that we feel like we know what's happening there. Same issue I always have with Legion of Superheroes. Just use names more. The first time you see the character, use the name of the group. That's all I needed there. Beyond that, I think this is a pretty stock standard Cyborg story right now, him wrestling whether or not he is human or machine or something in between. It's a fine story. There's a reason it's done to death. I think the art here is actually very good. I like the way that it's done. The writing also is very competently well done, but it's just not anything that's blowing me away. It's a perfectly good issue. I'm just waiting for it to get to the thing where I'm like, okay, yeah, I'm getting this now. So I guess I'll say a 7. I'd be diplomatic about it. It's good. It's just not amazing. We Are Robin number 3, written by Lee Bermejo, art by Jorge Corona and Rob Haynes. So last issue we got a whole thing where there's like an underground group of people who are going to storm up and like bomb the upper world, and then we had our little group of Robins come across some of these bombs, and now they have to defuse them. We open up though with a new Robin who is this girl who's just at home, and she's trying her best not to eat some sugary food, so she gets some sugar-free gum or whatever. And she hops on a computer, and they call her Shug, and they say, hey, Shug, can you find any information on defusing a bomb? We got some problems here. So she seems kind of like the one behind the desk, the one behind the chair. We see them trying to figure out what to do with it. It's got like a 20-minute timer on it. Duke is there, and he's trying to respond to the nest, but there's like no signal. There's no way to get a message through. Meanwhile, they are on some subway tracks. So as they are looking at this bomb, a train comes down and starts barreling past them. And they're like, ah, crap, everyone off the tracks quick. So they jump out of the way as fast as they can. And they're like, okay, fair enough. This is high tension, high reward. We got to get this done, though. And so they get a message from the nest saying, step 1, cut the plastic cover off the blue wire, but don't cut the blue wire. And it's just like, all right, here we go. We just start defusing a bomb. Meanwhile, outside in the main part of Gotham, we see a bunch of people just walking around like a father with a child. And then all of a sudden, the underground people come up and they start their attack. And there's just Molotov cocktails. There's all this craziness. Meanwhile, as some of the Robins are looking at their bomb, we see that other ones have split off and have found another bomb further down the tracks. And they are assuming they're following the same instructions, but they're like, okay, so we're doing that first bit. We cut the plastic off the blue wire. What next? And it keeps on jumping between the two plots, but I'll wrap up the secondary plot up until a point, is that we get Shug, who is basically running coordination for a completely separate, different bunch of Robins, and they are responding to the riots that are going on downtown. And we see that there is one there named Redbird, who's like pretty much already down in town, and he's like, this is crazy, I'm going to jump in, I'm going to take care of this, back me up when you get here. And everyone's like, no, don't do it, it's too risky, whatever. But he ends up jumping into the fray and protects people as he can. And after a few more pages, we see a bunch of more Robins that we are not familiar with have all shown up. They're joining the fight. And when I say a bunch, I'm talking at least like 2-3 dozen more Robins. So they all jump in. They're all joining the fight. We see that Shug is like happy that they've managed to do all this stuff. And that the mom comes in to Shug's room and is like, hey, I made you dinner. It's all this stuff. Come on down. And he's like, Mom, I'm trying to save the world. And she's like, you get off that darn computer and you come down here and eat your food before your brother goes. So that's kind of that plot for a while. But going back to the bomb plot, we see that the nest is giving them a bit more information, telling them how to cut the wires, but it's very specific stuff saying like, oh, if it is a copper wire, do not cut it. If it is silver and it's two-pronged, then cut it. And they're like, I can barely tell what it is. We're just working by phone lights here. There isn't that much to do, but they're doing whatever they can. We see the train once again comes down. They have to dodge out of the way of that. And we come down to the secondary bomb. The secondary group they're just like, okay, it looks like it is a two-pronged silver wire, so I'm going to cut it. And everyone's freaking out. They're just like, oh God, are we sure? Is that positive what the message said? And they're just second guessing themselves. They've still got time though, but he's just like, all right, that's what the message said. We got to trust Batman. We got to do it. He wouldn't put us in this situation if he was just going to throw us under the bus now. So everyone's sweating. They cut the wire. Timer goes off. They saved the day from one of the bombs. So at that point, we see back up top as the Robins are all coming in, joining the fray, joining in the fight. We see that's when all of a sudden the big bat light comes on over top, and we get Jim Gordon Batman joining the fray. Meanwhile, back down on the subway platform, Duke gets a message from the Nest. They think they know how to disarm the bomb. They're just like, oh, okay, cut the red wire. That's exactly what we did on the other one. But it's like, well, hold on. We don't know if both bombs were made the same. We can't make that assumption. We got to take this step by step. But Duke gets a message from the Nest saying, hey, it says get on the next train out. Like, we don't want to risk this bomb thing. We got to get out of here. And they're like, but we can do it. We just need more time. We just need to be able to focus on it. So we cut back up to the fight. Jim Gordon Batman's going around in the bunny suit. He's taking out all the rioters, and the Robins are like, yeah, we're Robins and we're fighting alongside Batman. Fantastic. But then Batman just grabs one of their like makeshift weapons and says, all of you need to go home now. You are all breaking the law, and if you don't disperse, I will get you all on inciting a riot. Do you understand? They're like, but we're on your side. And he's like, no, you are not. You are endangering yourselves as well as others. Get out of here and leave the crime fighting to professionals. And we see Shook behind the computer like, this isn't right. I thought we were working for Batman. What the heck? So we see another subway coming down the tracks. The gang still wants to try to take care of the bomb, but they realize like, okay, here's the train. We got to at least see what it is. And the train does come to a stop. It's got a big R painted on the front. And it's just like, oh my God, that's awesome. They got a custom train for us and everything. So everyone hops into the thing except for one of them, Troy. I think he's the football star. He's still outside and he's like, I can do this. We can't let them win. I'm going to stay here. I'm going to take out the bomb. And everyone's like, no, Troy, stop. What are you doing? Ness said to go. We got to go. And just like, no, I can do this. Trust me. So the train continues on. Everyone looks super upset. They're like, oh God, Troy, what have you done? And Troy hops down with the bomb and he's like, all right. And he cuts a wire and he blows up. There's a huge explosion. Everyone in the city can see it. And they're like, oh God, what just happened? And we cut back to a computer that's watching all this from the train. A hook hand turns off the cameras. It's Alfred. It's always been Alfred. We see him walk past all the beards and stuff. He's always been the one behind all this. And he walks past I think it's Jason Todd's Robin thing, Robin suit in the tube. And he's like, oh, you mock me, young master. Yet another I couldn't bring home, but the Nest must go to them. And that's where the issue ends. So yeah, I think I was aware before this issue, or before the series even started, that it was Alfred. I knew that going into it, but you got to play up the questionability a little bit. I like the bomb aspect, and I like the idea of like, Troy self-sacrificing, even though he did it poorly, but like he had to at least try. And there is that kind of level of ego to it, of you get brought in, you think that you're signed on by Batman himself, you feel a bit invincible, and then it all just goes to shit. I like that as a conceptual level. What I have a problem with in this book is the idea that it isn't just this small gang. Like, all of these teenagers that we see are fighting alongside Jim Gordon Batman in the riot have all also been recruited by the Nest, by Alfred. We're talking dozens upon dozens of kids joining this fight. I am okay with them coming to the aid, seeing that other kids are fighting as Robin and just joining in as normal other kids, but having them all wear the Robin insignias and all being part of the same Discord group is like just a bit too far for me. I don't like the idea that there are dozens of Robins running around now. It just doesn't sit right. I would have liked it to stick to the core group, are the ones that are being trained up and are provided the resources, and they can inspire the rest of the kids to do something about taking back their neighborhood. But this just didn't sit right with me. So it's not a bad issue. Like I said, I really like the Troy bit, but it does balance itself out with the idea that there are just 4 dozen Robins running around town. I'm going to say a 6.5 because of that. Also because I feel like as much as we focused on the Troy bit, the rest of the group dynamics didn't feel very well explored in this issue. So it's just slightly lower than the 7. So 6.5 feels fair to me, but It's not that it's, again, bad in concept. It's just I don't like the idea of multiple Robins to the extent that they got them going on here. Sinestro number 14, written by Cullen Bunn, art by Robson Roca. So last issue, honestly, doesn't matter. It's a completely separate plot. This one is very much a, hey, new readers, let's let you jump in here and we'll tell you everything you need to know, for the most part. So we open up on some barren planet. There's a character named Nax, who is just your stereotypical looking alien. He's crash landed on this planet, and he says, Nax of the Nidroth Collective, you have the ability to instill great fear, and a yellow ring shows up, joins the Sinestro Corps. And as he starts flying around, he's like, oh my god, I can fly. I'm free. I'm finally off that planet. I never thought I'd be able to escape. And then as he says he's free, the ring says negative. You are promised to the Sinestro Corps. To which point he's like, what the hell is a Sinestro Corps? And then just shining in front of him is Sinestro saying, all right, well, time for questions to slip by, but I'll go ahead and tell you what's up. You have been chosen for a greater purpose. You will sow fear across the universe, and so with it will come order, and you have been blessed. And Nax is like, what? And so Sinestro just follows him around, just like, all right, well, how long have you been there? Like 4 months, 6? And he's like, I don't know. It felt like forever. And he's like, yeah, you know, imprisonment takes a lot of shapes or whatever. But here's the thing. You've gotten a ring. I didn't pick you out. The lanterns, the rings themselves picked you out. I'm not entirely sure why. You are a very strange choice for a yellow lantern. And he's just like, I don't know if that's a compliment or an insult, but I don't know what a yellow lantern is. And he's like, right, fair enough. I will take you under my wing. I will teach a new recruit. I haven't done this since. And you get that like panel where he's like, oh my God, Hal Jordan. Let's not talk about that. Anyway, from this day forward, welcome to the Sinestro Corps. We get like a 2-page spread where it just shows a huge battle between new yellow lanterns and what are effectively space pirate robots. And as they're flying through, Nax is like, this doesn't seem like a peacekeeping force. I think that that's a lie. And Sinestro's like, oh, please, don't be naive. Like, we're absolutely bringing about order. We just happen to do it through very forceful means. And Nax is like, so I'm a scary police officer? And he's like, yeah, fair enough. It's an oversimplification, but that's what you're doing. And he's like, look, thank you for getting me off planet, but I don't think it's necessary. Like, give me a minute. And he just blasts a robot off the side saying, yeah, a bunch of space pirates were killed off. They died because they went through some radiation or whatever. But the AI took over the space system, and because it learned their evil ways, the AI itself was evil. So we just started destroying all of them in order to save God knows how many people from future attacks. So, you know, we're doing good things. And he's like, right, fair enough. Anyway, as I was saying, I don't think I'm right for whatever all this is. And he's like, look, ring, tell me why Nax is eligible. And he says that he's a member of the Nidroth Collective, which are scientific people, and they conduct their experiments on sentient specimens from around the world, and it's about to say what his ability is. And Nax is like, okay, stop. I know what my ability is. I don't want to explain it. And Sinestro's like, all right, come on. So they head over to the war world, and they explored a little bit, and Nax is like, oh, I can sense the city has a yellow ring too. And it's like, yes, Ranks is one of our most powerful lanterns. And it's like, lanterns, what does that mean? And it's like, oh man, were you literally just under a rock? Like, this is basic stuff. How do you not know what a lantern is? And he's like, I mean, my parents didn't like tell me to go out and do things, and they kind of kept me sheltered. And it's like, that's weird for some race that abducts sentient creatures. And it's like, yeah, well, my parents were weird even when a bunch of weirdos. And it's like, fair enough. Anyway, lanterns are the ones that protect, like Green Lanterns were a thing, they protected space. Yellow Lanterns came in to take their place. And it's like, okay, how many of them are there? And Sinestro's like, not enough, but we're getting a lot more. And we see the science division of the Sinestro Corps, where they are bringing back the Manhunters. And we get Quasitrell, who seems to be in charge, and is just like, yeah, we're reactivating them. They're all going to be loyal to you, and they're all going to be equipped with yellow power batteries. It's going to be a whole thing. And he's like, do you want to hear him talk? And so he activates a thing that says, no man shall escape Sinestro's might. And Sinestro goes, oh, that's freaking sweet. So they let the scientists do what they want. And Nax is like, okay, you don't want them to have emotions. That's why the Manhunters are there. But like, what about me? I was taught to be clinical and without emotion. isn't that kind of a prerequisite for being a Lantern? And it's like, yeah, well, you showed a lot of emotion when you got off the planet. You were yelling about being free. And it's like, yeah, well, I guess that I was taught not to be emotional. I was never a good student. And Sinestro's like, oh, well, maybe you need a stronger teacher. And he turns to Manhunters and say, Manhunters, destroy this new Lantern. And so all the Manhunters start attacking Nax, and he just throws up a shield, and he's like, hey. The Manhunters back off, and he's like, well, those things could have killed me. And Sinestro's like, the ring chose you for a reason. You were able to defend yourself. If you couldn't control the fear, it wouldn't have chosen you. You can see it in yourself and whatnot. And if I didn't think that if you weren't able to survive that, then fine. Like, the ring wouldn't be worthy of yours anyway. So he says, all right, get up, let's go. And they go and visit Soranik inside of the medical containment area, and she's doing some stuff on the people who were affected by the paling. Remember the paling? That's still a thing. And just like, hey, Soranik, Nax, Soranik, you're both kind of newbies. Watch over him for a while. I got to go do stuff. And so he goes off, and Soranik's like, all right, so how are you? Who are you? What are you doing here? And just like, oh, sorry, I'm just kind of new. What's wrong with all these people? And she explains the paling. It's an emotional thing, and how she's trying to run tests on them, but they're all very invasive, and they involve like the neurosensors and whatnot. So it's like not easy to get to. And then we see Nax's ability, which is he is able to vivisect living things. He's essentially a surgeon where he can separate the skeleton, the muscles, the nervous system, all that, just wholesale. And he's like, yeah, this is what I do. This is like, I can take them apart and put them back together again. And it is absolutely agonizing for anyone who is not fully sedated. And Soranik's like, okay, I get why you were chosen. That's absolutely terrifying to watch it all. So yeah, sure. And Soranik points out, like, look, you're just part of a bigger plan here. Everything Sinestro's doing, it's all part of a greater plan. You, me, we're all part of that greater plan. And all of this recruitment drive is just Sinestro getting ready for war, building a stockpile of weapons. So that's where we're at. Technically, next up in this trade is Lobo number 10, which was published before this, so just a little bit out of order, but there was something going on with that Lobo publishing order anyway. So yeah, or maybe it was the annual. It was the annual. Never mind. Yeah, it's a fine enough issue as a jumping on point, but my issue being is that I don't need a jumping on point. As someone who has been reading the series, and this isn't a change in writers, this isn't, as far as I could tell, even really a new arc. This is kind of just the continuation of what we were doing beforehand, because Sinestro has been a pretty fluid story overall. I don't know, it just feels like it's nice to have this Nax character broken down, if that's something where we're going to be sticking with him, if he's going to be a major player moving forward. I'm glad we got that breakdown of his character here, but this whole explanation of the core and all that, the only thing I could think is that the cover of this book doesn't just say Sinestro, it says Sinestro Rising, which I think is technically regarded as like a crossover event because Lobo's in it as well. Maybe that's why we were doing this, but it's barely a crossover event. I certainly wouldn't consider it one. It's just a story arc in Sinestro. So, as a quote-unquote long-time reader, I don't think I really needed this issue. I think it's a little bit just slow and meandering, but it's not inherently bad either. I guess I'll say it's a 6.5. I guess that's where I'm coming down at. It really depends on how is Nax going to play into the future story, because if it's nothing at all, then there is no reason to read this issue. It is absolutely just a stopgap, but we'll see when we get there. Aquaman number 43, written by Cullen Bunn, art by Trevor McCarthy and Jesus Marino. So last issue, we got that there was some Atlantean group of mercenary assassins, whatever, led by Aqualad, and then they have to stop their fighting because, wouldn't you know it, a giant kaiju-sized thing shows up. So we intersplice between then and now. I'll go through the then stuff very quickly. Aquaman, after discovering all the stuff going on, goes back to Mara and says, yo, there's a bunch of refugees in like this whole other universe and crazy stuff. We gotta help them, man, and I want you to be by my side as head of Atlantis to share the news to the people of Atlantis. And Mara's like, you're a traitor, and then starts attacking him and using her water powers. And he's like, what are you doing? Jesus. And he's like, no, you put me in charge of Atlantis. You made them my subjects to put above my, like, all other cares, and now you're telling me that, like, you're going to go find other people and other subjects to put down my own subject? Like, no, it's not going to work. You're a traitor. And so Aquaman busts through a wall, manages to swim away fast enough to get away from her. We see she sent out the Royal Guard to try to find him, and then in comes Extriax, who's like, man, you got some women problems. And he's like, yeah, totally. Anyway, I am the king of the seas, but I no longer have my throne or my power or whatever. However, I can get other powers from a different king of the sea. And we see he makes his way to the temple, whatever, of Poseidon. And if it's Poseidon, looks exactly like it did in Azarella's Wonder Woman run. And just like, bro, you never show up here. You never worship me. And this time you do, and you don't even bring like a present or whatever. And Aquaman's like, sorry, I didn't have time to go shopping. Anyway, yeah, you know who I am? And he's like, yeah, you're Aquaman. Of course I know who you are. I'm the king of the seas, yo. And Poseidon's like, cool, awesome. You know why I'm here. What the hell is this other realm? Like the Thule and all that other stuff. And he's like, yeah, no, look, Thule. And he gives the whole backstory. Thule was a part of Atlantis who... It was various different city-states of Atlantis were warring with each other. One of them was led by a bunch of sorcerers, the Coven of Thule, and they were launching their own plans in chaos or whatever. And then Atlan came down and stopped all that and banished Thule into another dimension, universe, whatever. And it's just slightly away. And they have since been ruling in parallel, but in their own poisoned realm the whole time. And it's the sorcerers who are in control. And Aquaman's like, well, hold on. You knew about this other Atlantis. You knew it was going on the whole time. And you didn't say anything? You did anything about that? And Poseidon's like, no. I don't care about them. And in fact, if it weren't for the fact that they were about to ruin my life and my seas right now, I still wouldn't care about them. And Aquaman's like, all right, well, you know what? You're kind of a dick. There are innocent people over there. And I need the power to destroy the evil rulers and whatnot once and for all. And Poseidon's like, all right, I'll give you some new powers. No problem. So cutting back to the present, we see... Aquaman's pointing out the behemoth, he calls it, the thing from Thule, and he's like, yeah, that's the real enemy. So are you assassins, are you going to try to fight me, or can we like focus on that for a minute? And the assassins are like, all right, yeah, we'll focus on that. So they fight together. We see Aquaman's new power set that he got is control over the storms and winds and rains. He's got thunder and lightning powers, as we've already seen. And he calls it down on the behemoth and does quite a bit of damage, but the fight continues on. We see one of them, Charybdis, is like fully willing to die for the cause, and Aquaman saves Charybdis' life, and he's like, well, don't think I owe you or anything like that. I'm still going to kill you when all this is done. And Aquaman's like, noted. So... we then see Aquaman in the middle of the fight. It's like, all right, I do have all the new Poseidon powers, but I do retain one thing from my old life, my just biological thing, which is commanding the sea fish and whatnot. So he does his woo stuff, and he summons, I have to assume, the Kraken, who is many times the size of this behemoth, just lifts it up into the air and crashes it. It's just gone. So Aquaman looks over at the assassins. He's like, all right, I think we're done here for today. If you guys still want to kill me some other day, so be it. But for now, I think we're good. And Aqualad's like, yeah, all right, guys, we're going to go. We'll leave him for now. And we see Mera is watching this through the portal along with the evil people of Thule, and just like, well, that could have gone better. It seems like some people still care about their ex-king, but no matter. I may not know much about this man, but I will be able to find out from you, sister. And when she shapeshifts, she now looks different, and she's got the real Mera locked up in chains. Mera has a secret sister, and she's evil, and can shapeshift. All right. Okay, I'm kind of a bit disappointed in myself that I didn't think about shapeshifting as a thing, or someone like taking Mera's place, because obviously there was the Future's End stuff, and that had Mara versus Arthur. It was for a different reason, but it had them at odds with each other. And I thought, okay, are we just getting to that? Are we just like doing a thing with that of playing on whatever storyline that was going to be? And I never actually considered it was a shapeshifter, because that's not really a thing as far as I'm aware in Aquaman comics. So yeah, it wasn't something I was really thinking about, but I guess it makes sense. I will say, long lost secret sister, if this isn't something that's established in previous continuity that they're just bringing back, it feels like it's out of nowhere. It feels like it's like, oh yeah, no, she had a secret sister the whole time and we just didn't mention her because who cares about Mara's backstory? So I like that we get the explanation for Thule. I think there's some good moments in this, but it does feel like basically a padding issue of just explanations, and some of it's necessary, but some of it is a secret sister. So I'm going to say this is, I'll put it at like a 7. It's a low 7, but it's a 7. I got nothing really awful to say about it. It just kind of was an okay read the whole time. Harley Quinn, number 19, written by Amanda Connor and Jimmy Palmiotti, art by Chad Hardin. So last issue, the entire gang of Harleys was taken hostage by Popeye. I mean, Captain Horatio Strong. And they're out on a boat in the middle of the ocean. We open up on Staten Island, where the parents of the Quinn tuplets apparently both were just not home. They went on their own respective business stuff. Dad's a truck driver, mom's a salesperson, and they both got home at the same time to realize that the girls have been alone at home for a week. And so they go in, they see that the girls aren't there. There's a note saying that they joined a gang and moved to Brooklyn, to which point the dad's like, I'll go get them. And the mom says, no, you're a big crybaby. I'm going to go in there because I can get stuff done. And she's like, yes, ma'am. So we see Poison Ivy, Harley, Tony, and Eggsy, I think the name is, are all sitting around. Poison Ivy's apparently analyzed the seaweed and realized that like it's full of some alien stuff, but also has a bunch of other drugs in there. So at least we kind of know what it is. Tony's like, all right, look, we have scanned the Coast Guard database or whatever. There's a single ship that fits the description, and because of how late it is, it can only be the boat that they're looking for. And Harley's like, all right, look, we can't handle this over to the police and the Coast Guard because it could get messy, but Messy's my middle name. So Harley's like, I get the coordinates and let's go up to the roof. And we see she's loaded up with a backpack and a whole bunch of gear. They hop onto the poop throwing catapult and say, all right, I'm going to parachute down. I'm prepared for anything. Let's go. And so she gets literally catapulted all the way out into the middle of the ocean where the ship is. And she's like, look, I do feel bad for getting all of the gang of Harleys involved in this. Like, could they have known that this was happening when they signed up? Yes, but realistically, they couldn't possibly have. So I'm ready to come in and save the day. And if anything happens to any one of them, I'm going to go to a nunnery. So we see that he's swabbing the poop deck, and in comes Harley, parachuting down. He's got his back turned, so she just kicks him and says like, haha, here's the plan, I'm gonna blow you down. And so she starts pulling out her mallet, starts bashing him on the head. He just immediately picks her up by the face and just throws her against some of the other Harleys. She gets up, pulls out 2 guns, and is ready to shoot, but then he knocks the guns out of the hand, and she pulls out one more pistol, but this one turns out to be one of like the Joker pistols that just says bang on the end of it. And Captain Strong just starts laughing, and he can't stop laughing. And Harley's like, it really wasn't even that funny of a joke. And he's like, oh, ha, 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 ha. And then all of a sudden, he laughs so hard that he rushes inside of the innards of the ship and just shits his brains out. I wish there was a better way to say that, but like, it's what there's sound effects and everything, and all the Harleys are like, oh God, that sounds horrific. That's the worst thing I've ever heard. And one by one, they start like untying each other and all that. And he's like, okay, Harley, what's the plan? It's like, well, first things first, we got to make sure that he's actually down for the count. And then we're going to take the boat back to Coney Island. And then we're going to get him into like an addiction help thing so we can get him off the seaweed. And they say, all right, well, who's going to go down and check? And Harley's like, well, since I'm the boss, I nominate the only other guy on the boat. And Harvey Quinn's like, why me? I don't want to do that. And one of the quintuplets raises her hand and says like, hey, I fried my sense of smell when I was 8 putting together a model kit with airplane glue and all that. So I can go down. It's going to be no problem for me. And all the quintuplets are like, oh, you're giving up yourself here. It was nice knowing you. You're a hero. So we cut over to Coney Island where Poison Ivy is trying to see what's going on with a high-powered telescope. Tony gets a call saying that the mother of the quintuplets is being redirected to their rooftop. And they're like, it's just a mother of 5 kids. How bad could it be? And then Eggsy comes in screaming like, she's got a spoon! And we see her standing there saying like, all right, who's this Tony fella? You better tell me where my girls are or I will drag you to hell by your own ass hairs. And they're like, oh, Jesus Christ, she's got something going on there. So we get a cutaway. Someone at the retirement home where Cyborg is, Spaceborg, is trying to pawn off one of the MRI machines. He steps in and stops it by tasering the guy that's trying to be sold to, and then chastises the nurse, and the nurse says, hey, no, it would have just been insurance fraud. The hospital would be able to buy a new one that's even better than the old one, and the money I would have gotten from that can help save my daughter. It's you don't understand. I needed that money for her. And so I was like, all right, let's talk about it. Let's see what we can get there. So all the Harleys are waiting to hear back from the one quintuplet that went down, and it was like, oh, it's been 5 minutes. I don't know, is she dead? And then all of a sudden a huge fist comes out of the ground, followed by the quintuplet who's thrown out into the ocean. They throw her a life preserver, and now she's just out of the fight. Out comes Horatio Strong, who's wearing a GIMP outfit now. And they say, why are you wearing that outfit? What happened to your other clothes? And he proceeds to fill up 2 full panels with nothing but I shit my pants jokes. Like one line, like, I scatterbombed the lower deck. I slopped some gruel in Oliver's bowl. And he just keeps going. And then Harley says, stop, I'm going to throw up. And then she fills up 2 panels with euphemisms for throwing up. And then they say, all right, it's time to fight. And as they're charging towards each other, all of a sudden, Captain Strong is hit by a bunch of bullets. In parachuting down comes the mother of the quintuplets, who apparently was also just catapulted because the power of motherly love to protect her. So she says, oh, hey, I'm so happy to see you all. Where's your sister? And they see the sister off the side of the boat, just like, hey, I'm down here. Did you take care of the big bad man? So I was like, yeah, he's done. So we see Harley comes over to Strong, just like, oh yeah, he's dead. He's super dead. There's no way he could have survived all those bullets. And then he starts coughing and just like, oh crap, okay, he's alive. Never mind. Give him some water. Let's get him some bandages, and then we'll put him into a 12-step program when we get back home. So he's calling out. He's all sweaty or whatever. And he's just like, I must have my weed. And it's just like, well, this isn't Colorado, so whatever. So then the mom comes up and starts chastising Harley and saying, how dare you put my little babies at risk there? And it's just like, what? What are you talking about? They signed up for this. They're knowing adults. They can make their own choices. And the mom's like, what? They're 14. And she's like, what? No, they told me they were 19. I never would have put 14-year-olds at that much danger. And they all just start like whistling to themselves like, oh, hey, look, a fish. So all the quintuplets get slapped across the face by the mom. And just like, yeah, okay, you lied, whatever, like that. And Harley says, I never would have done that. You got to believe me. But like, they did a great job. They were always trying to do the right thing. You raised some good girls. And so the mom's like, oh, okay, Harley, you're welcome to come over anytime. Because apparently Harley also fed them. They were almost out of food because they were left alone for a week. So they get the boat back to shore. The quintuplets are packed off, sent back home, and we see Harley's talking to Coach, and Coach is like, yeah, we made $4,000 from the job, but because of all the hospital bills from shooting him a bunch, we're like negative $20,000 in the hole. So Harley's like, all right, send the girls out on some extra tasks. We'll get that going. Eggsy comes out now dressed in like a samurai getup, because why not? And he clarifies saying like, hey, Ivy went back home, but before she left, she got a call from, what's his name? Mason, your boyfriend, fling, whatever. And everything was calm. Everything was cool. You should talk to her at some point, and Harley's like, nah, I think I'll just assume the worst of it and make a whole sitcom plot out of it. And he's like, all right, sure, whatever. And we see her going into work the next day. It's such a long issue. She goes into work the next day, and she meets with the receptionist, who's all googly-eyed over Harley, saying like, oh, one day you will be mine. And as Harley gets into her gig, Cyborg is there with a bound and gag nurse saying like, hey, she tried stealing an MRI. She can tell the rest of the story. And they pull off the gag, and she's like, my daughter is being held by a Hollywood cult, and she's being held hostage, and I'm trying to raise enough money to hire a hitman, and that's the reason I was trying to sell the MRI. And they're like, how much was the Hollywood hitman? It's like $100,000, to which Harley says, sold, I'll do it. And that's the issue. Okay. I have said this for probably about 4 issues running now. The humor's just not me. I think in this one, there's at least like 1 or 2 jokes I can get, but for the most part, it's just so whatever. I think I will give credit to like layouts and stuff here. I think especially like once the mom comes in and like is talking about the quintuplets being 14, there's a lot of funny layouts with how they show like slapping all 5 kids simultaneously. It's got a good motion to it. But yeah, writing wise, it's a lot of gross out humor. It's a lot of just juvenile stuff. It's just not for me. Thank you for trying. Next, please. I'm going to say this one is... It's like a 6.5. I'm going to say 6, but like I recognize there's quality here for people who like that sort of thing. I just can't get into it. But in terms of issues of like wrapping up this plot and getting that all done with, moving on to the next thing, it's fine. It does feel really overly packed with a bunch of other stuff. I don't think we needed to get into the whole Hollywood stuff. Like you can just introduce the next issue with that. Not everything needs a cliffhanger, but sure, whatever. If we gotta, we gotta. I'm saying 6. Teen Titans number 11, written by Will Pfeiffer, art by Ricken. So last issue, we had Red Robin getting into fisticuffs with Manchester Black. They found out that salvation for Superboy is somewhere in a Supermax prison, and then Raven's unconscious because she's been teleporting too much. So we pick up Manchester Black's apartment, and he's like, haha, Red Robin, you have nowhere to go. You can't teleport out. I have you in my apartment. All the chaos that Superboy caused on the bridge is all over the news. You are literally completely surrounded, and there's no way you can get out of this apartment. And so he picks up Raven, and Red Robin goes, there is one way, and he dives out the window behind him and pulls out his wings. And Manchester Black is like, yeah, I keep forgetting he can fly. Yeah, all right, fair enough. And all the elite come in, and they're like, we got like plenty of people who could just go out and catch him. Do you want us to just do that? And he's like, nah, don't worry about it. He's not a threat to us, and I know exactly where he's going. So we cut over and we find out where the Teen Titans meeting up now that they can't go back to the penthouse. And the answer is they're hiding in some old payday loan place and letting Raven recover as they're looking over plans for this Supermax prison. And Red Robin's like, look, here's the deal. We are trying to break into this prison. It is going to be absolute hell. I am giving any Titan full reign to not take part in this mission. It will not be held against you, but like, you need to know this is not like our normal stuff. This could actually be A, illegal, like super illegal, but also B, might kill you. And everyone's just like, whatever, we're Titans, we're in, we're doing it. So they're saying they got to break into the prison. We then cut over to the prison, which is called the MAW, the Metropolis Armory Ward. And some other separate event happened where there is some Royal Flush Gang and the Cobra Cadets were fighting, and the psychic dampeners in this place got knocked out. So we see who I believe is Dr. Psycho and Simon, maybe? They're talking to each other and able to be in each other's minds. And then we see Beast Boy comes in with a USB drive strapped to his back as a little rat. He makes his way over to the computer terminal without being noticed, but he has to turn into a human to type in the code. Guard notices him then, holds out a gun. He turns into a polar bear. As he finishes typing in the code, the guard freaks out, calls in other guards, and they think that it's the psychic dampeners being down, that someone just made him see something, so no one cares about it as he turns back into a cockroach. So the rest of the team is good to go, and they go talk to Raven, who's still a little bit out of it, and just like, hey, Raven, for whatever goddamn reason, we brought you to the Supermax prison, despite the fact that you won't be helpful here. We need to know what we're up against. Tell us, who are we fighting here? And she's like, oh, I see a huge red body and 3 eyes and a big fin on top of his head. Oh, God, we're all going to die. And then she, like, passes out again. And Red Robin's like, ah, crap. That's Despero. Yeah, we can't fight Despero. We're absolutely going to lose this fight. Despero, nope. And he explains that Despero was in the Justice League book way back before Forever Evil. Is psychic. He's big. He's brawny. And, like, everyone's fought him. And he just keeps on coming back. So, yes, he's a problem. And Bunker's like, okay, so what? Just the 4 of us? We're going up against him? It's just like, no, just me and Chimera here. Bunker, you're going to stay with Raven because for whatever reason, we brought her to a Supermax prison while she's still super weak. So that was dumb. But regardless, yeah, you're going to stay here with her. And Chimera, you're going to come in and help me. But, like, do you have any idea how many powers are behind that wall? You can absorb them all. You might be able to take on Despero. That's the only option we got here. So it turns out Beast Boy was setting a worm inside the computer that was going to allow them to open up the door with a new number code so they don't need to know the old one. And as he's like, all right, we're going to get in there. Just a few seconds. Here we go. 3, 2, 1. And then as he types in the code, every single cell in the place opens up. Clearly unintentional. Red Robin's immediately like, that's not part of the plan. So Blockbuster immediately comes across Red Robin just being like, you're the one who put me here. And he's like, no, it wasn't me. You got me confused with someone else. And he's like, I don't care. So he's immediately got a problem. We see Bunker's like, you got to save him. We got to do something. And Chimera takes on Bunker's abilities because I guess she can do that as a Durlin and knocks out Blockbuster. Livewire then shows up and just like, haha, now your villain is me. And Red Robin's like, don't even bother with her. She's not really a threat. We got other things we need to do. But Livewire taunts Chimera enough to be like, okay, well, I got to give this a try. And so she copies Livewire's powers and shocks her as well. As they make their way through, Red Robin's like, no, we got to call this off. Every single person is now out of their cells. This is too much chaos. We are not going to be able to do this. And Chimera's like, no, this is our only chance. We got to find Despero and we got to clear Superboy's name. This is Superboy. Where do we find this Despero character? And it's like, well, he's the most dangerous type. So he's not in the normal holding area. He's way, way down in the sub basement. So they start going down some stairs. We see Raven starts coming to a little bit, not a whole lot, but he's like, hey, I can't get you guys on the comm. Are you good? And Raven's like, yeah, they're still alive. They're just underground. And he's like, oh, hey, are you feeling any better? And she's like, sorry, I can't really do anything. I'm just conscious, but like, I'm sorry I'm not a good member of the team. And Bunker's just fortifying the walls up with his purple bricks, just being like, hey, it's no big deal. Meanwhile, we're safe in here. And then we see right outside the doors like 17 different inmates. So we do get a final couple pages here where Manchester Black has just been sitting back like, all right, we don't have to do anything yet. We can just sit around. We're waiting for the big thing to happen. And all of a sudden, everyone like freaks out like, oh, what is that? And they hear something coming. And then there's a huge whoomph noise as something crashes through the roof of the mall. People start calling in. They're like, what was that? A missile? A plane? What's going on? Manchester Black finally gets the elite together and says, all right, everybody, it's time for us to get to the mall. We're going to teleport in. We got to shut this down. And we see Tim and Chimera are trying to see what it was that caused that big crash. Despero is sneaking up behind them in the darkness. And in the front, we see it's Khan. It's Superboy. And he's like, that's right. It's me, Superboy. Now, give me back my life. So, yeah, that's the issue. It's okay. It's fine. I don't... I feel like I've said this already, so forgive me if I have, but ever since we set up the Manchester Black stuff, like, God knows how many issues ago now. I think it was pretty much at the start of the series. I kept on thinking, okay, this is going to be a good arc fill, and we're going to, show that he's actually a douche, and then we're going to wrap up whatever it is he's doing. And the fact that we've gone into this whole elite thing, it does give his character a bit more presence. It makes him a bit more of a long-lasting thing, but now that we're into this Superboy stuff, I don't know. I just feel like this isn't a Teen Titans plot. Because they keep on talking about, like, oh, we need to save Superboy. Superboy's the main focus here. We got to save Superboy. But it's also not a Superboy plot because he's barely in it. But anytime that anything happens, Superboy's the one that's forwarding the action. The Teen Titans just kind of react to Superboy showing up. So really, it just feels like this is a Superboy book. But we have to tell it from the perspective of the Teen Titans, which makes it a little bit more frustrating to read. I don't know how better to say it than that. Like, the fact that what did they really accomplish here? They didn't fight Despero. They fought Blockbuster for all of about 2 panels. Same with Livewire. And then that's really it. Everything else was just setting up this plan which then immediately fell apart before we even knew what the plan was. So, yeah, no, it feels like the Teen Titans are just passive in their own book, and Superboy's the only one that's forwarding anything here. So I guess I'll say this is just a flat 6. I don't think I can really give it above that. It's not that it's bad from a conceptual perspective. It's just weird that it's a Teen Titans book and it doesn't feel like what I would want out of a Teen Titans book. Justice League 3001, number 3, written by Keith Giffen and J.M.D. Mateus, art by Howard Porter. So last issue, Supergirl showed up and took care of Starro, and they negotiated the freedom of this planet of people. It was planet Woden, and they look at the Wodenites, and turns out when Starro's not in control of them, they're just like angry primal beings that have absolutely no higher brain function. And Batman, Superman, and all them are looking on like, what did you do to them? It's like, no, that's just how naturally they are. Like, that's why we came in as Starros. We filed the necessary paperwork, and we were going to help them not go extinct from all this infighting and hurting each other constantly. And Batman and Superman are like, okay, but slavery's not okay. All right, we can't do that. And they're like, yeah, easy for you to say. You're from 1,000 years in the past. Things are different now. And Flash speaks up. Terry is just like, I'm from now, and I still think slavery's not okay. And Starro's like, okay, well, then you can file the paperwork. But like, yeah, no, this was how this planet was going to be saved. Whatever. So they all bail out. They go through a portal, and just like, man, I can't believe we just walked away and just let Starro do whatever he did there. It's like, yeah, well, whatever. And they chew out Guy for a little bit for forging the fake paperwork or whatever. And just like, look, someone else did it. I just forced them to do it. And they question, hey, wait a minute, hold on. We brought along a Starro creature. Why is she here? Why is this Starro one here? But we then cut over to Supergirl talking to Terry, and Supergirl's like, wait a minute, hold on. I thought we were going back to the Justice League headquarters. And it's like, we are. It's in a castle now. Also, and I think this is a genuine just writing mistake here, they say that it's on the planet Takron Galtos, which is Earth in the future, but also a prison planet. But they're not. They're on Camelot 9, which is a totally separate planet. So, regardless, Supergirl's like, I don't like that. I want explanations. I don't like any of this stuff. This is all too weird. We can start with, why is Clark a total jackass now with delusions of grandeur? And Superman's like, I don't have any delusions. They're all true. And we see that Superman and Batman once again get into the same conversation of like, oh, there's DNA, blah, 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 corruption in or whatever. So they talk about whether or not they can trust this is the real Supergirl. Turns out a DNA scan says it absolutely is, but Superman may be a little bit jealous that there's someone else running around with the S on. So we see the Starro woman comes in and is like, hey, Ariel Masters. And it's obviously Lois Lane in the body, but Ariel's like, why are you even here? And she's like, well, we filed the paperwork in order to basically have a representative in the Justice League of a Starro, so that way this sort of thing can't happen again after the altercation on the planet. And she's just like, oh God, all right, you filed the paperwork, fine, whatever. But if you got to be sticking around, and Guy Gardner comes in and be like, Guy's gonna be your official companion. Guy's going to watch over you all the time. And Guy's like, what? No, I don't want to do that. And she's like, well, too bad. It's your fault she's here in the first place. So I will say, Keith Giffen and James D. Mateus, I don't know who's the one actually writing the script here, but they keep going back to the well of Guy Gardner has the mind of a dude inside the body of a woman. And it's not handled with grace. I'll say that much, but it keeps coming up. So we cut over to Lois, Ariel, who is talking to her robot buddy and just drinking heavily, saying like, that was supposed to kill them off on that planet. I don't understand why it keeps failing. And the robot's like, maybe being Lois Lane, the criminal mastermind and psychopath, you are toying with your food a little bit and you're not actually trying to kill them as quickly as you think. And she's like, shut up and get me another drink. So then we get Bruce and Clark, not Superman and Batman, but like their human alter egos or whatever. They go down to a bar down on Takron Galtos and they talked for a while, and Clark's like, why did we have to like use our civvies? What's going on? Why do we have to like hide out on this prison planet? And Bruce says, have you noticed something weird about Ariel? She's not acting like herself. I don't know what it is, but something's wrong with her. And Clark's like, you dated for a while and broke up. It's okay for you to just be like weird hanging out with her. And he's like, no. This is Batman intuition stuff. We always trust Batman intuition stuff, right? And Clark's like, I guess, yes, fine. And she's like, cool. I think the League may have been infiltrated. And then all of a sudden, Sheriff Tariq comes up saying like, oh, hey, Superman and Batman, super obviously. And Superman's like, oh, crap, and grabs Batman, just jumps out a window. Batman's like, why did we do that? And it's like, because he's a host for the Convert. That was covered in the first arc. And Batman's like, and then we beat them and we scanned him and everything was fine. Did you forget about that? And then screw that story, because then we go over to Booster Gold, Blue Beetle, Fire and Ice, who are fighting against a giant turtle man. I know. And as they defeat the Turtle Man, they're like, okay, well, we're doing a good job. We're fighting him. How do we get the Turtle Man out of here? And then in comes Hal Jordan, Green Lantern, who we knew was still alive, but is dealing with Green Lantern cancer, and Barry Allen, the Flash, who looks like just Barry Allen, the Flash. He doesn't look like he did at the beginning of the series. No explanation is given there. But regardless, they're like, oh, you fought a giant turtle man. Well, we were the ones who said that we would keep track of you as we try to make Takron Gatos a truly good place to live once again. It's like, yeah, and we're working on it. We can do it. We don't need babysitters, says Booster Gold. And Blue Beetle's like, well, we are kind of massive screw-ups. And Booster's like, shut up. They don't need to know that. And then all of a sudden, the giant turtle man is gone. As they look back, it has shrunken down into a smaller form that they said looks a hell of a lot like Jimmy Olsen. Because for anyone who doesn't know, in the Silver Age, Jimmy Olsen also had an alter ego as a giant turtle man. So we see Sheriff Tariq calls up Lois, knowing that it's Lois, and it's just like, hey, look, I scratch your back, you scratch mine. Why was Superman and Batman on my planet? Are you like secretly looking into me? Are you doing whatever? Because we had a deal here where I would pretend to be a good guy and you would not reveal that I'm still the convert. And Lois is like, I genuinely have no idea what they were doing down there. I promise you that's not what I'm doing, but please keep an eye on them. So she goes over, looks in the mirror saying like, all right, I'm sick of being in this body. It's been like over a year. Screw this. I'm going to go kill the Justice League. Ronald the robot, you're in charge for now. And she's like, great, cool, awesome. So we see Bruce and Superman arguing a bit more down on the streets, and it does not matter, but Bruce storms off angrily as Superman goes into a portal, and as he hears somebody getting their purse stolen, he's like, I shouldn't do anything because I'm in my civvies, but I am Batman, so I guess I will. And he chases down the person, who's then yanked into an alley, and we hear these horrific sounds of things being done to them, and someone screams saying, oh my god, it's him, he's real. And Batman's like, who's real? And as he steps into the alleyway, he sees this person has been murdered, and there is a big bat symbol on the wall. So, wouldn't you know it, someone's taking the place of Batman. And then we cut over, you would think that'd be a perfect place to end the issue, but no, we cut over to Guy and Wonder Woman as Guy has pushed the Starro lady down the stairs and thought it would be funny, but it wasn't. And Wonder Woman is saying, it's your womanly nurturing attitude coming through to Guy, which Guy says, that's stupid, I don't like that. I don't want to talk about that. So they basically, Starro's basically saying, you're not being true to yourself. You're bottling up your emotions, Guy. Let them all out. And he's just like, all right, well, shut your big fishy mouth, or else I got 5 fingers that are going to show you how much emotion I'm really bottling up. And the Starro says, hey, you were told that you had to keep an eye on me, that I'm your responsibility. And Guy's like, you're right, I only have to keep an eye on you. Hey, Wonder Woman, let's go out for drinks. And we see them sitting in a bar, and then like tied up on a flagpole outside the window, but still within eyeshot, is the Starro person. And then final page is Terry excitedly trying to do like a girl sleepover thing with Supergirl, saying like, I've never had another girl before. We can stay up all night. We can talk about our hopes and dreams or whatever. And then Supergirl goes and talks to Ronald the robot and says, hey, can you just like put me back in my ship for another 1,000 years, please? Thanks. I think the series as a whole, when I look at it from a really zoomed out perspective, including 3000, the series as a whole is fine. But when I get down to the individual like issues, from the panel to panel, speech bubble to speech bubble, I get so frustrated because it doesn't feel like we're ever actually making forward progress. Everything feels so slow and so much of the same ground being covered over and over again. How many times do I have to hear Lois Lane sitting in the body of Ariel Masters saying, gosh, those blasted Justice Leaguers, I want to kill them so badly. Like, that is 5 pages of this book are dedicated to that. Why? Just we get it. We know it's happening. You don't have to keep cutting to it over and over again. I'm not saying I dislike this book, but this particular issue just got me in a way that I think hasn't happened for a while. So I'm going to say this one's like a 5. That's entirely subjective. I have nothing backing that up. I was just very frustrated reading this book because it just kept going and yet nothing was happening. So 5, please do something. And that's it. That is all the comics that were put out by DC Comics this August 26th, 2015. And something I completely forgot to mention in the beginning, because I was trying to rush through that as fast as possible, is we hit 1,000 subscribers on the Comics channel, on Comics from the Multiverse channel. Thank you so much for everyone who subscribed. I know that like out of the 1,000 people, probably like 5 of you are actually here for me in any meaningful regard. But regardless, I do a lot of other work with the channel, so it does mean a lot to know that at least 1,000 people are interested. That being said, one of the things I specifically said is when we hit 1,000, we get access to ad revenue. I have already confirmed. I have talked to the elders of the channel council and made it so that none of these videos, none of my long-form content are going to have ads on them. So you're welcome. Enjoy. Anyway, let me tell you what's going to come out next week. We only have 8 comics, so here's hoping I can actually get that one out. In alphabetical order, they are Batmite, Batman Beyond, Detective Comics, Green Arrow, Green Lantern, Lobo, Midnighter, Omega Men, and that's it. I don't know why I didn't end on the upward inflection there. But yeah, if you have any comments on any of the comics that are coming out this week, last week, and we could all go ahead and hit me up in the comments down below this video. Let me know what your thoughts are. But if you are listening to the audio version of this, you might not have a comment section, in which case we have a Discord. We have a subreddit, we have a Patreon. All of these places are places where you can make your opinion known, and I will listen. All 1,000 of you. Or, you know, like 5. Again, I know my audience is somewhere in between those 2 numbers. I'm choosing to believe it's the higher amount. But yeah, go ahead and check those out. Links are in the show notes or description, depending on how you are listening or watching this. But yes, thank you for watching, listening, and indulging me through 208 episodes of this show. Be sure to tune in next week for a whole lot more of exactly what you got this time. And always try to remember, if it ain't broke, don't fix it.